to be able to answer any questions. Then after they can be introduced.
Okay, that's it. Yeah, I know. It's probably have to switch off the lights or something. If we're going to make it much clearer. Is that better? Okay. Alright, so the proposal from Secretariat that we move the item on updates from the PR, we move it up so it comes before the updates from the CCM Secretariat and anything from the constituency. So we move it up so that the PRs can actually present, and at that point they can be excused because then the rest of the business will probably have nothing to do with that. Is that okay? So if it is, I'll propose somebody to propose the adoption of the agenda and someone to second. Okay, so the rest proposes and Clive seconds. So I'm also requesting for a volunteer to take minutes for us. Volunteer? So you see, for those that know me, you know that you don't volunteer as your own, so can you just volunteer? And the trouble with the investment, so I can't, some of you who are supposed to be nominated, voice color. We need to project the minutes, right? So we don't have the printed do. So for today, we'll share the minutes here and we can review them. For those of you that were in the last meeting, you can be able to help as we flow. I know it's been long since we met. We'll review them today. However, going forward, after this meeting, maybe this goes also those that are taking down notes, that the minutes will need to be shared as soon as possible because now going forward, we need to share the minutes 2 weeks after this meeting, they'll be shared again. So by the time we come back, we're not going to go through the minutes, start making corrections and stuff like that. We should have done that already. So we just come here, we adopt the minutes, and then we move. Because normally we spend so much time on reviewing minutes. We start to formats that are missing, focus on the content prior to the meeting. You would have that. You shared with Chris a long time ago. Yes, Annie. Yes. So the proposer is Grace. Now as Grace Banda. The seconder is Clive Shkalanka. Okay, so should we just quickly introduce ourselves, your name and the organization you're coming from, please?
My name is Grace Banda from Zambia.
My name is Anthony Ukamalambo from ESN.
I'm Kambasha Chizuka from Alliance for Accountability.
Good morning. My name is Benji. I'm Reconciliation TV.
Good morning. My name is Lombek Sanda. It's no organization. Francis Chamba.
Chanda Whiteman.
Milamaye Scientific Warrior.
Makabuanzi. Sinata April. Good morning. I'm Francis Chu, Professional Information.
My
But in terms of the chart implementation arrangement, you will learn as a present implementation arrangement that they have a number of layers. There's the lead sub-recipients that they will be awarding funds, and the lead sub-recipients will be expected to sub-grant, to later sub-grant also the sub-recipients, so that they spread the cake even more and have more players on the ground to implement and play a role, because all of us have a responsibility at the end of the day. So, in brief, say, but also just mention that in terms of the global fund, these kind of engagements are mandatory. We're expected to perform these engagements every year. We should be able to have meaningful engagement with the communities. Apologies, my phone came up silent today. Yeah, so we expect to do this as a country. It's one of those activities that are part of the eligibility criteria. For us to be eligible, the global funds, we need to be in sync like that. Okay? Any questions? If nothing, I think we'll be able to talk more as we get some of the updates. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to find out when the last meeting was, which date.
For June 2019.
Okay. So can we move on now? Oh, so we just asked her to introduce the person. You're welcome.
Thank you. My name is Martin. I'm coming from Philomena.
Thank you. My name is Abraham Melo of Philomena Association.
My name is Achille coming from Zambia.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we can now move on and then we'll continue to interact. So as I mentioned earlier, so the meeting is somehow limiting, that we can only have 12 people in the room. But we realize that there's a gap, but because young people are able to follow on a number of social media platforms, so I thought maybe for this one, we could actually provide this opportunity. As of yesterday, there was so much demand and so many people wanted to actually be part of this meeting today. So we couldn't get the 240 people that we had later to this meeting. We'll be fighting with people like the lady in the corner. Yeah. So and we didn't want to cause trouble. All right, thank you. So that's all. We're going to keep the record of everything that has happened this week.
So good morning again. My name is Karuswika. I work for the CCM, the Global Fund CCM Country Coordinating Mechanism. So I'm here to submit the report that the MOH and Charles submitted. It's basically a summary of the implementation updates for the grant, the malaria HIV/TB grant. So we have an oversight committee which provides oversight on the grant. Then we have the SPI committee where Sibu is the coordinator. That basically looks at the investments of the global fund grant. So even as a youth, you still take interest in what the global fund does. There's a global fund website, and most of the members are volunteers. So even Sibu was a volunteer from the youth and found his way up as a coordinator and the youth coordinator, and is also now the chair for the SPI committee. The oversight committee is the one that provides oversight of the global fund grant. We also have Mr. Kalumba. He's a visually impaired, and he actually is the coordinator for persons with disability. So he's also someone who took interest in global fund way back from as far as 2007, and he now sits on that board. So, can to the first slide. Ministry of Health and Chats. So this is the financial performance. This is from 2018 to 2020. And this is basically just to show an overview of what has been the budget, this graph, and then this is what has been dispersed, and this is the expenditure. So this is the 78% is the absorption rate for the HIV grant for CHAS. Malaria grant 78% as well, absorption rate. MOH HIV TB 68% absorption rate. MOH malaria 51% absorption rate. For Global Fund, they always grade the principal recipients. I'll keep on saying PRs. When I say PR, that means it's actually okay. So the financial performance is linked to some indicators. Imagine if you're given 10,000 kwacha, and they asked, how are you going to spend this money? So you have indicators that say, I'm going to do this money to this person, I'm going to spend this on maybe buying blocks, I'm going to spend this, this money is going to go to buying drugs, and so on and so forth. So when the grant is given, you're given that particular grant. After you spent it, I'm going to come back and ask, how did you use the money? Where did this money go? And depending on how you use the money, that's how Global Fund grades the principal recipient. So A1 and A2, that means child that did an excellent performance over the grant. So A1 is usually 90% and above, or 99% and above, 100% performance on the HIV TB grant. But there are various interventions that are linked to the US dollars. So even for malaria, the grading was A2 for CHAS. This is also 99% and above performance. B1 for HIV TB for Ministry of Health. This is the budget. This was what they dispersed. Disbursement means what you give to your sub-recipients, SRs. And then the expenditure, what has been spent, whether it was drugs. Sometimes the money can still be sitting in procurement. You can maybe pay for a venue in advance before you actually implement those activities. Or maybe you pay for certain drugs or mosquito nets and the like, for example, for malaria. So the money is still sitting there, but those activities are going to be implemented. That's just an example. So for B1, that's between 60 and 89% performance. So Global Fund graded the principal recipients in the last reporting period. So they usually do first semester, January, 6 months, and then another semester, 6 months. And they get the reports from Global Fund. So the funds that have been spent during the grant, if you look at this 326, maybe you can switch off the lights. So the overall grant, this is the total grant that was received in 2018, and it's supposed to be used by the end of 2020. So 2018 to 2020, and we're now getting into the next grant, which is 2021. So my job is an oversight program officer. So when we receive the reports, so HIV, TB, malaria, this is MOH. CHAS, this is what they received. CHAS, malaria, this is what they received, and this was the total budget. Their expenditures, this is what they had spent, and to be spent by the end of 2020 is this amount. So we only have 80% time left, which was that was in Q4 reporting. They usually have quarterly meetings. The committees usually have quarterly meetings. So this was the Q4 submission just up to performance of September 2020. So we're expecting to receive a different picture, which will be submitted for the Q1 2021 in March. And I'm going to report on what they've done around this period, up to December 2020. So the link between for the financials is Global Fund always asks 5 questions: where is the money, where are the grants, and the like. So here we're looking at the performance of the HIV TB. Just a minute, please. So the HIV TB grant for CHAZ, when I mentioned the ratings of 90 and above, for oversight, we have a dashboard. Who knows what a dashboard is? Or what does a dashboard do? Who knows what a dashboard is? A dashboard, yes? What's a dashboard? Just a quick one. What's a dashboard? Don't click it to what what's a dashboard?
Simply an indicator of all members put together, like all information is kind of to one picture.
Where do you find the dashboard? Where can you find it?
Use cards, certain machines. It's going to be constructed with that together.
So the CCM has a dashboard on which, when I receive a report from Ministry of Health, there's a grant manager, and for Ministry of Health, there's also a grant manager for CHAZ, that's the executive director, Madam Karen Chinga, and then we also have the Dr. Dean Piri from Ministry of Health, program management unit. When we receive the reports, I'll have a dashboard where everything goes in, and it's going to flash with green on certain indicators, there'll be red on certain indicators, and there's also going to be yellow on certain indicators.
So,
I have a question. Talking about 5 questions. We only have 2 questions. We start with 5 questions that the year is going back. There is no relation to. I'd like to go as a.
Okay. So I'll get back to those ones, but it's always the money, where the drugs, and how we reaching the intended beneficiaries. But I'll explain those 5 in detail after the presentation of this. So the indicators, there are specific indicators that the principal recipient submits to Global Fund and which Global Fund tracks. So like I was saying, if I receive the report, this is the country coordinating mechanism request for a report. And the like, and even see whether their intended interventions are being implemented. So there's an adolescent program on the CHAZ grant, of which they have some indicators. So usually we request for this report, I'll receive the report. So we'll have some flag in green, red, and yellow. So that's a dashboard showing. Let me finish the presentation, or else the questions can come after. So green, red, yellow. Red is something that's like a warning, like this indicator isn't doing so well. So I'm the oversight committee secretary. I'm the program oversight, officer for oversight. So I'm going to ask the principal recipient, why is this indicator still in red? Why haven't you achieved this particular indicator during this reporting period? Why is there an overachievement of this one? Which is good, but why is there an overachievement? Does it mean you didn't do your targets properly? All those are some of the questions that the oversight committee asks the principal recipients, CHARS and MOH. So for this reporting period, this is what they received, this is the indicator. We usually focus on the red ones, especially at the end of the year, to find out why exactly and whether or not we're going to reach the intended the target. So AGYW stands for Adolescent Girls, Young Women Reached with HIV Prevention Program, supported by CHARS. So it was at 41%. So this underachievement was due to the closure of schools, due to the COVID restrictions, except for exam classes. But by quarter four, the principal recipients CHARS did explain that they're going to reach 100% achievement. But the overall grant rating was A1, rated by Global Fund, which is still linked to other things, the financials and the interventions. So, this is just a summary. They had achieved most of their indicators. So under the TB diagnosis, the HIV TB. So this is another color coding that is used. The dashboard automatically flags out the colors and it automatically shows you that, okay, this indicator, or this particular financial module is in red or green or yellow. This is just a summary, but the dashboard has a number of indicators, has a number of financial modules that to show you that this particular amount of money is in red, meaning there's a bit of a problem there. So under the HIV, the TB diagnosis, cases of all forms of TB, this is TCP. Don't worry about this because these are just indicators. So the performance, 70%, 62% notified TB cases contributed to TB program providers. TB 4.1, people newly enrolled in the TB program, and also the percentage of new registered relapse TB patients with documented HIV status. So we did ask the principal recipient, and some of the reasons, for example, for HIV TB 4.1, there was a drop in this because of the vitamin B6 countrywide, but not in all child facilities. Some facilities didn't have the vitamin B6. Then they also had challenges with the for TB HIV indicator. They had challenges with the revised testing guidelines. For TCP1, they had challenges with some of the COVID restrictions in the facilities. The malaria targets, they achieved most of their indicator, their targets. There was not much that needed to be submitted to the CCM. So for MOH, you can see the rating at B1. Program performance, MOH, HIV, TB. This first indicator, this is the key population indicator, HIV percentage of MSF reached with HIV prevention program defined packages, service and services. This indicator, the principal recipient MOH did indicate that they couldn't implement or reach out, that the linkage to the community went as well. So they couldn't really reach out to the KP community due to the COVID restrictions. For number of people, this HTC1, the HTS1, number of people that received their results at 47%. This indicator was also affected. This was because of this program had actually changed to testing made to targeted testing. That was the explanation that MOH had submitted. And they were also using the HTS screening tool.
It's disconnecting there. It's not a better extension plate. Okay, let me try it. Let me try it. It's coming on. Try there. So, so cookie charge.
Sorry, I can continue. So I was done with this indicator. The other thing that I forgot to mention is the provision of the PEs. Those are PE educators. Well, doing over the years, this has actually been an improvement in the performance. There was also availability of commodities such as the condoms, the test kits, self-test kits, and also lubricants for this particular indicator. Still on HIV TB for MOH, which is at B1, they achieved most of their targets. The percentage of HIV TB infants receiving, those infants exposed, receiving a virological test for the within 2 months of birth at 82%, which is not so bad, and it has still continued to show an upward progress despite the COVID pandemic. For the TB diagnosis B1 for Ministry of Health, the explanations, like I mentioned, in the previous slide, we didn't have these explanations, but this is what the principal recipient submits. So in summary, the notified cases, there was still some contact tracing in some communities, but due to COVID, some of the community volunteers were not able to track or map their patients, which is also the same as the MDR TB. This is multi-drug resistant TB clients. These are TB clients who actually have TB, but their TB is actually different. It's actually, they are resistant to certain drugs. So they have to be isolated or kept in the particular health facility. Others are even provided with a stipend. For example, I know for child they provide a stipend for, I think, about 800 kwacha for the TB, MDR TB specific clients. And they'll also need to train more MDR TB, they'll need to trace more MDR TB contacts during this COVID period. So we're still at B1 for MOH HIV TB. The actually programs, the targets were actually achieved. And there was also availability of vitamin B6 for the particular indicator. Other than the indicators and the financials, where is the money, where the service is being done, and also where are the drugs? So when you have the drugs, we have to know we're getting money. Are the ARVs available? Are the malaria test kits? Are the malaria RDTs available? So when you see this MOS stands for months of stock. So we get, so like today I got a stock status report, which shows the overall drugs that are available in the country, which is also linked to medical stores. That's global fund support. Okay? So MOH is really a quantification committee, that various committee that sits to provide oversight on what we have as a country. So when I received the same stock status report, I shared with my committee members, who are only seven committee members who look through the overall grant as well. They have the technical expertise. If I have any issues, I'll provide that to them. I provide my technical support, or they also give input to myself. But I have to make this summary so that we submit it to the CCM committee, the CCM, the full CCM, the 17 members. So the months of stock that is submitted in Q4 report. So TLD, these are all ARV related drugs for the HIV stock levels. So pediatric ARVs, we had like this is like 1 month of stock. And then even this is also represents 7 months of stock. And this was the explanation. When we asked, okay, you have 1 month of stock, the next one will arrive and it will be 3 months of stock, and it's earmarked for January and February. Okay, you understand this part. Then 7 months of stock determined. SD Byline, we also ask like which other partner might support in the provision of SD, because we only have 1 month of stock from the Global Fund. Then again, we find out that at the end of 2020, the US government, we also have partners from TEPFA. One of the multilateral bilaterals, we also have membership. For example, in my committee, I have someone from TEPFA. She also provides a technical expertise. We have someone who is also in procurement, supply chain. He also understands the whole stock status report, and he also provides his input and say, oh, USG is also going to have an advanced consignment. That's for the overall country. Self-test kits, 3 to 7 months of stock. There's also an advanced procurement that has already been done. And we're going to give some more self-test kits in February or March. Okay? So usually they say, oh, they are stock out. Sometimes you're already aware that there's going to be a stock out of certain drugs. So if you come out in the media, there are not no test kits in the country, but maybe you already be aware that there's going to be a gap. And sometimes even they will deal with the power, like we ask for certain amount of money to the Global Fund before some of the stories will come out, but we've already done some in-house high-level communication with Global Fund and other partners. TB stock levels. So for this one, you see this 36 months of stock for the pediatric TB drugs. So this question was asking the principal recipients, can you check on the expiry? This is a lot of stock for the pediatric TB drugs. So we're still going to have these 26 months, but in those 26, are any drugs going to expire by the end of 2020? Are any drugs going to expire by 2021 quarter one? So we need that report from the principal recipients. If they are not, then we're still going to have that amount of drugs in the country. So this is basically how we the stock level. You can see the performance of the targets was above 90%. In green, which did well, we didn't need much explanation. Most malaria cases were received, they received their drugs in most parts were issued with the indicators. Sorry, on that last slide, yes, it's all in red. And the long-lasting insecticides, mosquito nets. Okay, the mosquito nets that I received in the health facilities, don't show mosquito nets, NLS campaign in certain targeted communities and also targeted risk groups. Who are these risk groups is what you ask. Risk groups can even be some of the pregnant women who receive their NLINs at antenatal. So they'll do the home mass campaign, but they first also, if there are very few mosquito nets, they'll start with the pregnant women at antenatal. So for this indicator, it was all in red and IRS in yellow. IRS, all these are linked because first of all, there was a delay in the delivery of the LLIMs. Two, there was also a delay in IRS. IRS is the spray that goes on in the communities for malaria. So the all we firstly because there was a delay, like I have mentioned, and also delay in the receival of the NLIM, delay in the starting of the IRS program because these chemicals for IRS spraying also came in late. So we had the gassing. If you remember, there was gassing at the beginning of the year, but still when the PRs had already requested and started purchasing started their procurement processes. Then we have the COVID. You have airlines maybe coming from out of the country. You have the chemicals coming, but you find that there's just this lockdown. Okay, there was a lockdown and we didn't have those mosquito nets being shipped to Africa or brought to Africa. So we had the delay. Then they came in, then we still had the lockdown, and there was still that delay in implementation of certain activities. So that was the reason for the red performance. Months of stock as well. For malaria, we also check for malaria, we check for HIV, and we check for TB. So as I explained earlier, like RDT, these are the testing for 4 months of stock. For December, 3 months, so it's going to end probably in December. This quantity will end in December. And then 1 month of stock expected to also finish in December. So the way forward, when we know that we have one more month, we usually ask, how can we achieve the 6? So the principal recipient submitted that GRZ is going to submit, even PMI is also another partner that works in malaria and is also going to assist. When you look at the LLI routine, it says 0 months of stock, but these are also in country. But what I was explaining is that it was just a delay for receiving a particular month of stock. So the summary key challenges and recommendations that were submitted to the CCM was inadequate transport for sub-recipients as the SR that received the grant from Ministry of Health and Chats. And this negatively affected the service delivery The lack of transport also impaired support to mentorship, for mentorship visits, for SRs to SSRs, the districts, the provincial officers to district officers, and also other health facilities. When the principal recipient has a challenge, they submit that to oversight committee. Oversight committee will submit, so they're asking, okay, CCM lobby to facilitate procurement of at least vehicles for some of the sub-recipients, not necessarily all sub-recipients at provincial or district, but for some. So this proposal, because if you've got a problem, at least you should have or submit a solution or a proposed solution. Then this is what the CCM Oversight Committee submitted to the CCM. Poor power outages in most of the health facilities. This also delayed in the lab processing of lab results. So MOH and partners need to invest in power backup, which has already been done and is still in the process of listing those particular facilities that need support in the power. It has also been included in the new grant, the grant that started in 2021. Other key challenges, the delay in implementation of community-based activities. I gave an example of the adolescent programs, AGAPE and CHAS. Also some contact tracing, TB notifications. The COVID-19 affected some of the community interventions. Loss to follow up and also defaulting clients. We had a number of the principal recipients had a number of defaulting clients on treatment. They also looked at some innovative ways to work with the community-based volunteers, but this was like a key challenge to submitted to the CCM as to how COVID-19 affected some of the community-based interventions. So after the report is submitted, we discussed questions, answers, solutions, way forward with the principal recipient oversight committee. The oversight committee submits recommendations. They give recommendations to the principal recipient and also to the CCM, and they agree. So some of them are action points, action taken points. Others are also in-house recommendations within the oversight committee, what should be done between oversight committee and the CCM. So not all of these are linked to the overall to the PRs. So for example, PRs to follow up closely with the SR retirements by the end of 2020. The grant is coming to an end in 2020, December 2020. MOH to check expiry date of commodities with high months of stock. PRs to discuss and improve on pandemic preparedness. We're getting into 2021, but how best are they going to work so that the long procurement processes are not affecting some of the interventions? PRs to submit closure reports by the end of 2020. PRs to fast track activities. The grant is coming to an end in 2020. How best are they going to work and accelerate their interventions? PRs to start new grant preparations early. So the grant starts in 2021. What have they already done? This is December. So we already seen some SR, some core of expression adverts in the paper from CHAS. Ministry of Health, we saw some adverts for HIV TB officers in provincial offices that are supposed to work with MOH PMU. MOH to share details on procurement to be carried out by GRZ other than the global fund. How else is the government assisting in procurement of certain commodities in the new grant? So this one is for CCM to be able to follow up and know, okay, we have global fund support on certain commodities and procurement. What about the government? Number 8 is, this one is an internal recommendation. So recommendations to the CCM to follow up on MOH no-cost extension. For example, we had the delay in the receiving of the LLIS, and that activity is supposed to end in December 2020. So MOH did submit a no-cost extension request to the Global Fund and are still waiting for feedback, but they wanted to continue some of these activities in January 2021. This is an internal one. Follow up on 4.6 million in the allocation letter as to whether it has been repaid to the global fund. This has to do with the MSL, medical stores. CCM and oversight to familiarize themselves with the acceleration plans. CCM to follow up on JRZ procurement plan. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you. So we have MOH and chat. Is there any questions you can ask? Question to MOH, question to Charles.
Good morning. I just wanted to find out, are the performance indicators related to the Sustainable Development Goals? Are the performance indicators based on the Sustainable Development Goals, or maybe they're based on the current trends of health?
Good morning. I want to find out why Charles and the Ministry of Health are the only principal recipients. There's like some kind of requirements that needs to be met or
everyone. Welcome. I'd like to inquire on the application for no cost extension. More detail, is it that there are two funds which have not been utilized? What are the plans there?
Okay. I noticed I noticed a lot of progress, particularly from Chad. But my question is on what strategies were used to reach certain targets and go far beyond some of them with the pandemic that we had at hand. Secondly, I also noticed there was enough money that wasn't spent, particularly on HIV prevention interventions. So what could have been the reasons for condom stockouts? And then another one on the HIV stock, is it levels? Something like that. On HIV stock levels, I noticed there was nothing on condom stock, especially that we have interventions that are based on HIV prevention. Thank you.
So I think we noted a lot of progress, especially when you look at the percentages. However, I felt that when you calculate the numbers, as you indicated, there were a lot of gaps. For example, HIV testing services, those people that received their results and or that didn't receive their results. Because I felt like the gap was 9,955, and I was wondering because when you look at the percentages, it looks like they made targets or they went above target, but I think 9,000 is a lot of people who might have tested and do not have their results. So do we know where these people are? Do we know how we can find them? And sort of if they're HIV positive, get them on treatment? Because I feel like if they're positive, then that is a risk. And then, yeah, for BMMC, I was thinking, for COVID day, how did you manage to overachieve your targets, knowing that people were scared of hospitals? And so now I see those numbers and I'm thinking, COVID day, how did you exactly do that? I saw that for child and MOH, but I mean, and you actually say that the way, I think you were affected by COVID, but those overachievements, I think, for me, I mean, I'd like to get clarity on that. And then I saw funding for TB, sorry, I mentioned quite a lot of things, for TB resistance. And then we didn't see any funding for people with comorbidities. And I feel like now we have a rising number of those young people. Is there any plan for those people, especially that we're planning to transition almost 80% to BTG? But we know that if you have TB and you have any other huge illness, then I mean it affects your treatment. So how exactly have we planned for those young people? And then also I have a question on stockouts because I saw that we have some money that wasn't used, right? So if we have some money that wasn't used and we know that we had stockouts and some people had to be switched back to other regimens and then back, and then we know that once you do that with drugs, that is treated like a sort of like you are defaulting because you are switched from and those are problems. So in the future, how do we plan for such things, especially that we expect second wave of COVID? So how do we do these things knowing that we have some more money? Yeah, and then for adolescent girls and young women, I noted that from both child and MOH, there were problems. And we see that even with PEPFAR, we see that these are the gaps, especially even with low to follow-up. So exactly how are we planning? Because for PEPFAR, MOH, and the global, I mean, all three of them are having problems there. I mean, how can we, what is the best strategy moving on? Because we see if it's lost to follow up, it's like there are 10,000 and things like that. So how exactly are we planning to help adolescent girls and young men?
There is there's a question online.
There's a question online.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a question online. You can read it. No, there's on live. There's someone asking a question, so you can go ahead and
Yeah, you can read it as well.
Okay. It says, how can a young people play role in sensitizing the communities about SRHR during this COVID-19 period, especially using digital platforms, reaching out to those who cannot afford such platforms like in rural areas?
That's Moses Mwanza, live on Facebook.
Calling it the last question. Please feel free to ask.
There are possibilities where just because the period has come to an end, we have to give back the money, or maybe we can reprofile and utilize the monies in the following year.
I'm encouraged. Thank you so much. So, but let's keep the questions coming. And we have the right people in the room that are capable to respond to any question that you can ask. So I think the room, are there any questions that you can take here, or we'll give it right away to the PRs? We take notes of these questions, so you see which ones you can answer yourself, then handle out the ones that you can tackle. So let's give it PRs.
Colleagues, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to apologize for coming late. I had to attend a finance meeting at the office before coming here. My name is Chris Chikatula. I'm the Global Fund CCM Administrator here in Zambia. I do recognize that we have guests from Nairobi. You are welcome to Lusaka. And in other countries, my position is just called CCM National Coordinator. Okay, so I think I'll take the one on why we only have 2 PRs. Came from the gentleman in the corner there. And I'll touch a little bit on reprofiling the grants. As for the 2 PRs, so as part of the Global Fund funding requirement, the CCM is required to assess the current principal recipients and nominate when selected to the Global Fund. So there's a whole process that happens. Now, what happened this year is that the CCM put together a technical task team under one of its substructures called the Oversight Committee to actually assess the current demand. Okay. So that happened last year, it happened between Q1 and Q2 of this year. And the report was produced, and when that report was produced by the TTT, it was submitted to the Oversight Committee, who looked at that report, and of course strengthened that report before it was submitted to the CCM, the full assembly. And in that report was a recommendation that the current PRs must continue in the next grant cycle because actually they had done well. I think you saw the global fund rating, right? The A1, A2, the B1, and the B1 for MOH. So also within that report was that given the envelope that we have for the next 3 years, there was no need to have a third PR or any other PR indeed. Why? Because then we had to justify what is happening now that we think the two PRs are not doing. One of the arguments probably would have been that, MOH is not dealing with the key population. CHAS is a Churches Health Association of Zambia organization. On its doctrine cannot allow for that. But then again, we have the structures of the two PRs, and those structures for MOH allows to implement the key population grant under the National AIDS Council. Okay, so it was found that the two PRs actually are managing well, as you can see from the rating. Of course, we were affected by COVID like any other country that is receiving grants from the Global Fund. So that report nominated the two PRs to continue because they were suitable to continue in the next grant cycle, and it was uploaded together with the funding request. The CCM, what the CCM does within that report is to tell the Global Fund, as a country, we think that the two PRs are suitable to continue implementing Global Fund grants in the next grant cycle. So the Global Fund then have a say on that. Why? Because they also have information from LFA, the local fund agent in this country is PwC, they collect that information. But they have other ways of collecting information, so they collect from the bilateral partners, from the multilateral partners, and they look at the grant performance the last 3 years. So once they approve the budgets and also the performance improvements and everything that comes under grant making, means that you're suitable to continue with it. Okay, so the possibility of reprofiling is what we call reprogramming. Most of the money that you have seen, by the way, I hope you were told that that report is out as of 30th September. You were not? So September is Q3. So that report was submitted to the CCM in Q4. Okay, it was submitted to the CCM in Q4, meaning that Q4 2020 will be submitted to the CCM in Q1 of 2021. Okay, so now, given the pandemic situation in the country, we've had a problem with the procurement system, procuring commodities. So the commodities, such as in malaria, the nets, this year, by the way, we were doing the mass campaign for nets. Okay, normally we do targeted net distribution, like pregnant women and infants below 5. So this year, the nets came late. Again, issues of procurement. As you know, we do not manufacture those nets. Secondly, under malaria, again, indoor rescue spraying chemicals arrived late. So we are just coming out of Northwestern Province in Solwezi and Kalumbila. we went to witness some indoor spraying activities there, and the district health office and the provincial health office was telling us, oh, we received these commodities late. So IRS spray must start in September and finish in October before the rain comes. So again, the procurement and supply chain of these commodities came late. So when we went there, that's when they were actually beginning to distribute nets to the other districts from Solwezi. Okay, and that's when they started working on spraying the houses in Solwezi and other districts. So basically, those are the two, and I think probably as the other people are giving you responses, such as we have Churches Health Association with us, and we're trying to call Charles. So
strategic framework, the national TB strategic framework, national malaria strategic framework. Then you further break down into annual amounts, the annual budget and ABC. So here we are looking at the lower level. But definitely you are feeding into the SDGs. If you go and look at the SDGs and you look at issues of maternal health, maternal indicators, if you look at issues of under fives, and the like, all those, they are breaking down to what we are doing here. So that is the link, okay? So you may not directly see the link here, but it is actually linked with the SDGs, okay? I'll leave the other questions. I think the issues of the budget reprofiling or reprogramming, Chris actually answered. That was as at September, okay? We will have to see at the end of this grant, meaning in a few days' time to the 1st December, where we are sitting. But for example, for Charles, you saw there was a balance, I think $17 million as of September. There was another one which was, I can't remember what the malaria figure was. But already as at this month, by the time we're getting into this month, we were sitting at $10 million and 600,000 for malaria. And that 10 million, 7 million was already committed for ARVs, which are being delivered as we speak. Okay? As we speak, they're being delivered and payments are going through. We have additional payments for things like the viral load reagents, amounting to close to $700,000. We also have COVID procurements, amounting to close to maybe $1.6 million of different products. And most of the COVID materials we have are laboratory reagents. Okay, so that money is actually committed. Okay, if there is money that will cross over or be sent back, it is very minimal amounts. And you can never avoid a situation where that some money will remain because of the way the global fund mechanism operates. Because if it ended 31st December and they allowed you to say, in 3 months at least, you finish off the little money that's remaining, then you can finish off 100%. But because of the way the global fund operates, 31st December they will say, bam, cut off point. Even if you've bought items and they have not been delivered by 31st December, they will not consider that as part of the grant expenditure. They will push it to the next grant. So because of their rules and regulations, there is always some money that will cross or that will be lost. But the issue is how much of that should be lost. For us as CHARS, we are aiming that the absorption that we should be getting should be above 95%. Okay? And if you look within the region and globally from principal recipients, you actually find that others will even be doing 80% absorption, others even 75%, especially because of the COVID era that we have gone through, where people have been failing to spend money and out of no fault of their own. Because sometimes I'll tell you, like, for example, RDTs, these rapid diagnostic tests, the ones which are used for malaria, it was very difficult even to get them during this period because all those manufacturers who make those tests for testing for malaria had switched the same capacities to ensure that they could start doing rapid tests for COVID. So there are those challenges as well that are beyond our control. Okay, so for the other questions, I'll invite my colleagues, Mrs. Zimba and Dr. Mwila, to take up the responses.
Just before Mrs. Zimba comes in, the issue of no-cost extension, so the CCM is helping the Ministry of Health on that one. And the reason is because of the late arrival of malaria commodities. So it's not, again, a fault of our own. We do not manufacture these. So what we are saying is, can you allow us to continue these activities into 2021? And it's a no cost. So the money has been spent this year already. And when we come to reporting in Q4, we find that it will reflect that we actually procured IRS chemicals, PPT, and all that, and also the nets. So some of those yellow colors you see will turn into green, but the activity has to continue into 2021.
So maybe just to also just add, the question really linked to being able to move the money better. But that particular budget, I think, is unique because it's related to procurement, and this is money set for MOH. It's money not sitting in the country with us. But the procurement system is made in such a way that there's money that goes directly to the supplier as and when the commodities have been received. So that is that one is a unique case. Otherwise, if any money that we fail to finish in a year, that is money that will goes out. It goes back to the government fund.
I'll tackle the question to MMC in terms of how did we manage to reach the target. As you well know, in the first quarter of this year, we had the gassing, of which most of the program people could not go for outreach because of the issue of gassing. There was insecurity in the country, followed by the COVID-19, where we had the guidelines restricting program officers to go out for outreach for VMNC. However, with the restriction, we had guidance that we could perform the VMNC services at facility level where we would be able to observe the COVID guidelines. And that's what was done. And in addition to that, we had to carry out a number of activities. Instead of having maybe 2 outreach in a month, we're having every week an outreach in the rural centers or health posts, so that we would catch up on the numbers that we were supposed to have reached in terms of circumcision. I hope I've answered your question. Coming to adolescent programs in the rural areas, how can we bring them on board in view of the COVID-19 and the restrictions? As CHARS, what we have done is sub-recipients, including ourselves, are continuing to meet with the adolescents in smaller groups. Because we've been allowed to meet in smaller groups, and that's what we are doing. Additionally, we are working on a system to try and see if we can have the group of people reached through the virtual meetings that we are having here in the urban areas. But that we are still working on it. But currently, we are working through smaller meetings, smaller groups meeting at a time, and these are done frequently than normal, so that we are able to reach as many adolescents as possible.
So my concern was only, I mean, I understand that that's what you were doing, but with the people coming, because we know that when there was a lockdown, especially stayed away from the facilities. And I mean, if there's a COVID and your parents say stay home, you will not go. So I think that was my concern. My concern was around, I'm saying my concern was around whether these girls or these people who were going for VMMC actually came to the health center. It's not that the services were not being provided, but did they come? Because we know that when there was a lockdown, everybody was at home. So how did you manage to get them? And yeah.
They were coming. We have community mobilizers for VMMC who were provided with bicycles. They go around to mobilize a group of a good number of people to come for circumcision. Once they've talked, mobilize men or young people, then they are given a date and they contact the health facility to go to that particular rural center and conduct the services at that time, on that day. Yeah. So we have mobilizers in the community who will continue mobilizing on behalf of the facility.
Probably just to begin by saying the questions that related to drugs and the switching as relates to the adolescents is an issue that is driven by the Ministry of Health. And if you have noted, in the shortest period of time, we have had a huge evolution in terms of drug combinations, which are safer, efficacious, and something that will give us better results in terms of virus suppression in the different age categories as we look at pediatrics, and adolescents, and then the adults. And just for your information, we have got Dr. now coming in the pediatric section, and it's almost on board because evolutions and pharmacokinetics, probably just to use that term as indicated that we are able to utilize that. But then speaking to the area of the young, or rather the adolescents, they are on board to be transitioned as relates to the use of DTG, and there is guidance from Ministry of Health starting from the age of 20 kg, from the weight of 20 kg going upward. And so the adolescents are not being left behind. As long as they qualify based on a number of parameters, they are on board to be transitioned to far much more efficacious drugs. In terms of what that has caused, I think you related to issues of clients defaulting, and I could not get it very clearly because of the switching attributes. Was that the question?
No. What I meant was because of what I was referring to was because of COVID, right? We saw that some clients who were transitioned to DTG were transitioned back to another regimen. Why? Is because they were stockouts. So that's what I was referring to. And my question was around how safe that is. Because if I'm on a drug and I stop, that means that I cannot go back to the drug. Why? Is because when I do this to drugs, that's almost like defaulting. And so how effective is the drug then if I'm doing this? I mean, we understand that there was COVID. And also, how prepared are we for second wave? Because we're being warned for second wave.
Well, probably just to try and make it brief and up to the point. At the point when we're transitioning clients who are stable.
Yes.
Clients who have not failed the drugs. And so moving back and forth on the two different regimens did not have any effect in terms of the efficacy of the drug that we are giving. And so equally at the same time, in the facilities that we are supporting, we had to ensure that those who are stable were given drugs for longer periods to ensure that they had enough stocks, and that would not kind of like disturb their, taking on the drugs for the period we had those challenges. That's just to respond to that. If you're changing drugs and you're not looking at viral separation, because for one to transition, the basis was that they were supposed to be virally suppressed. And so a different question will come in for those who are not virally suppressed, and the changing probably will be different. You look at that client differently. And so there shouldn't have been a problem for clients who were virally suppressed and they were transitioned back and forth on those two regimens. Just to respond to that. Those to follow up in our facilities, speaking for Charles, we do have adherence support workers that have been brought on board. We will continue to have those moving forward, and those will ensure that clients that are on our register are adherent and they are tracked for any eventuality during the course of their treatment and they are on our treatment register. That's just to try and respond to the issues of loss to follow-up moving forward. But also we are beginning to run on an innovation of peer-to-peer tracking system, and that we believe that will also help us ensure that clients are there and are not defaulting on treatment. Thank you very much. I hope that's fine.
So I also have a question. I know that I've asked this question in other forums, but let me just check and see if I always make any progress with regard to COVID testing in the country. I think that is still a huge challenge. It's very costly. It costs 1,500 kwanza to get a COVID test and get a certificate. And we are calling this a pandemic, an era where people are broke, and to get a COVID test, you require that amount of money. And then as a country, I know that we are receiving support from external partners, especially the global funds. They're giving us support for the COVID test, the test kits and everything. But why are we then turning it to a business venture? Because it sounds like a business venture. It's really annoying when you're put in a place where you actually have to pay that money. Paying the money is one thing, but also if you're out of Osaka, even just getting a test itself is a huge challenge. I mentioned last time when I was supposed to travel from Livingston, I couldn't get a test. In Choma, I was told I need to go to Macha, and that's in the province. And then this is myself. So I'm wondering what is happening to the other people If somebody is actually has suspected they might have COVID, and it takes that long for them to get tested and confirm that they have COVID, don't you think it would be spreading even like wildfire within our communities? So for me, my question is, what are we doing to make COVID testing affordable and accessible to the common man out there? Yeah. So it's coming back again because I just faced the same challenge again today or yesterday when dispatching some of our colleagues that came for the interview. Yes, there's a cost, and also the hardships in ensuring that you get the certificate on time. So that's my question. Are we making any progress? Are we seeing a situation where we get to a free COVID test situation because they're receiving support? If we are not prioritizing that, let's prioritize accessibility and affordability as something. So not just progress that we are making, moving towards making it affordable and accessible. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so I have a question on funding for comorbidities, and I think it wasn't answered because I saw that for people who are resistant on TB drugs, there is that provision for them, but young people with comorbidities, where are we? Are we planning for them? Because, I mean, the numbers are increasing and we need to have a plan for them in terms of the funding. And then also, I saw that we had power outages as one of the challenges, but I know that we have been experiencing these outages since I think even 2019 or 18. And I'm wondering how come that from that time we haven't had a plan to sort of have backup power, especially for labs, and especially that these are health centers, people are on oxygen. So so I'm wondering why MOH and indeed the global times didn't have a backup plan since all those years we've been experiencing outages because they are not new. And also because we saw that there's some money that has not been used from other PRs. So it's also the same when we talk about transport, because I feel like there's some less money you can allocate some money towards buying one car. I saw one car or something. And then for ANC, I saw that we had gaps in terms of reaching pregnant women because we're only able to reach 58%. And if we were able to, for adolescent girls, use the community health workers, why didn't we make such an effort for these women? Because once they register, we know where they live, we know that we can follow them up and ensure that we provide these things. Of course, yes, there were delays, but we had these people in our registers, and if we had them in our registers, it's easy to follow them and provide these things because pregnancy and malaria are complications I think that all of us know about. So yeah, I feel like we should have done better in terms of providing these commodities to pregnant women and also people who are at risk, because I saw also that we're at 22%, which I feel like is very high.
Also,
just hold on. Hold on.
Speak slowly.
I have. Can you hear me? Okay. 5 minutes it is done. All right.
okay. I asked two questions that have not been answered. Looking at, since this was at quarter three, and there was money that was still not spent, I'm wondering why we have HIV prevention indicators and interventions, but we still had stock outs on with condoms.
And the perfect place was the condoms expert is this doctor. Yeah.
Okay.
But I can take the power outages one.
Okay. Then also on the stock levels.
Yeah,
The stock levels that was big.
For condoms, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. So, my daughter speaks slightly faster than you. I'm able to follow. I was just telling Mrs. Zick by ear. I said, "Oh, slow down, she speaks too fast."
Oh, I'm sorry.
I said, "No, that's fine. At least I'm able to follow." So some of the questions we left out because they were for the Ministry of Health. who will be able to answer. But in general, to start with the Sibyl's question, you know, the COVID-19 issue is handled at the highest level by the minister himself, and I think there's a detailed ministerial statement on the COVID situation. However, on the testing, COVID testing is free as far as I'm concerned, apart from private, facilities, and apart from those of us who like jumping on that thing with wings when we are flying. I think that's when people are usually charged for those who are traveling. But I can assure you, anybody who's around who's vulnerable, at least here within Lusaka, who requires a COVID test, I know the COVID test is free. I've accessed the COVID test myself at Chilenge Hospital there, and I didn't have to pay anything. You also be happy to note that at CHAS now, at the CHAS lab, we are actually testing as well for COVID. But these samples are being brought through, mostly I think from UTH, where they're being referred to, and the testing that is being done there is free, okay? But for travelers, I think there are special circumstances. The senior citizens, like you, Kwanache, I think there are different circumstances because, and the reason that they are charged for those who are traveling is to ensure that the same monies are used to replace reagents to try and buy for the vulnerable. Okay, I think that is the main concept. The other private facilities, what they are charging and what's difficult to comment, I think they have their own things how they've worked out. But at least the COVID testing, I can tell you that it is free. Dr. Kaonga will answer why you can't get a COVID test in Choma and in any other place. I think he'll pick that one up. Yeah. The other issue to do with the backup power as well is a general question, which I think the ministry can answer. However, these were the facilities that we have worked with, the ones where we have been implementing our treatment program. Currently, we are implementing in 89 facilities, and we are scaling up to 100 facilities. In the past, with the other grants, we have tried in some of them to put up backup generators. We have tried in some of them to put up backup solar, as far as the grant can allow, especially where we have the module of the RSSH, the Resilient System Strengthening for Health. Okay, we have tried to do that. Of course, this is a continuous process because we must appreciate that, especially things like solar, as much as it has been around for a long time, it's like we're still learning with the technology. Okay, you find you buy solar and you think you've sorted out your alternative energy issues, but tomorrow you find that the batteries run out. You need to buy batteries again, which are expensive and the like. So it's still an ongoing process. Okay. We hope and pray that the words of the ministers quoted in Parliament, the Minister of Energy, saying that power will be a thing of the past, will come to fruition, because I myself am load-shedded so much at home, and I'm constantly troubled by the issues of load shedding. But in health facilities, like you rightfully said, my dear, it's even worse. It's even a dire need. Okay, but with, of course, whatever little we get, we try to put towards that. Allocate some money towards transport. I think that we always try. Even under when we're doing the current proposal, there were a lot of requests for transport from all the units, literally within Ministry of Health, but from ourselves as well, with the different implementers who we have been implementing with. There have been requests for transport. You see, ZYP is a sub-grantee implementing different activities, but we have never given them a vehicle because there's just been not enough resources to be able to have everything on the grant. Currently within CHAS, I think we have over 70 requests from sub-recipients asking for vehicles. And this is for the right purposes, because when we implemented around 4 grant, around 2007 or so, in fact 2006, 2007, when we're scaling up treatment and they needed to do a lot of outreach services, we bought vehicles for the health facilities so that they could reach out to the communities. Because most of these communities, I mean, some villages are even 10 kilometers from where the health facility is. So we bought out vehicles. Now we bought vehicles for them to do outreach. Now you can imagine, from 2007, those battered roads, they're still using the same car. Today is 2020. You find the maintenance costs are quite high. So we have tried to ask as well, as a PR, to say, we actually need vehicles for implementers. But the biggest problem we have is that when we look at the proposal, if you look at the current grants which have been allocated, you find maybe even close to 60% of the resources are going towards procurement of drugs. That's just HIV alone. If you add the TB drugs, it will be something else. Under the current grant, we couldn't even achieve the 25% that we would have wanted to be specifically towards prevention, because we are being choked out on the drugs, okay? And the young people in this room and where you're coming from and the likes, it's also time that we are pushing, I know Dr. Kaunga will be on the call, but it's a long time that we are pushing our own governments to say, can you take up this issue of drugs? Because those are basic commodities, okay? Because if they take up a large chunk of these issues of drugs, the partners who are coming to help us can help to meet up these other challenges. I really like calling them the softer interventions, okay? The issues to do the outreach, the issues to do with peer education, support for the youth out there, support for those children who are not in schools. You know, they can help to sort out these other things. But for as long as the demands on the drugs are so high, it squeezes out other interventions. And we end up here, like you said, the transport challenges of transport have been there. Why haven't you sorted them out? Challenges of power have been there. Why haven't you sorted them out? This is the problem that we have as at now, okay? Because most of the funds are going towards the medical interventions and taken up specifically by treatment. The non-medical interventions are being stuck out, okay? I submit. You want to answer on comorbidities or co-infections?
I think Dr. Kaunga can. Let me just start there. I'll give you the phone. So I just wanted to add on power outages, just to mention that the CCM has written, in fact, a wrote to the Ministry of Health. They wrote to the Ministry of Health to request for facilities that are not connected to the grid in order that we can sort of resolve their challenges by alternating energy. So in that letter that was written by the CCM chair, the CCM also requested for figures. They wanted the MOH to cost that particular gap. Okay, so we received the response from the Permanent Secretary Administration. They gave us the list, well and good, but they didn't give us the indicative cost. And therefore, the CCM cannot make that effort to start mobilizing resources for alternative energy. So now we are getting back to the ministry and telling them, can you please give us this? And they are saying that they need to do a market survey for them to come up with that cost within that gap. So then we'll have to, CCM will have to push them to do the market survey so that we have, because you can't go to the donor when you don't have indicative cost of that gap. So I'm going to call Dr. Kaunga. He's ready now.
Okay, just to update the response from Charles with regard to the COVID test that we are the unfortunate ones. But I think that one is completely understood in terms of affordability, but then the accessibility I think is still an issue, especially outside Lusaka. In Lusaka, I noticed yesterday it was much easier to go to UTH, able to be tested, but then in these other provinces, very difficult. Southern provinces even better. There are other provinces that are more rural than southern. So I'm wondering what's going on in those provinces. So if we get any COVID patients there, I think it would just spread that wildfire, that these challenges, somebody has to move on and pass long distances to just go and get a test. How many people will catch the COVID within all these buses that they're jumping on and jumping off. So for me, I think since it's being driven at ministerial level, there's need for to follow up the advocacy, even from our perspective as a constituency, we can push for that. To see how we can ensure that ministers will have a more responsive approach or response to the COVID situation in the country. But I appreciate that. Thank you. Dr. Naldo.
Yes. Yep. Good morning. I'm just going to give the microphone and my phone to a participant, a member of the youth constituency, to ask specific questions to you related to the MOH presentation that we did. So just hold on.
Good morning, Doc. My question is related to the MOH presentation, particularly on HIV prevention interventions. I noticed there's still, as per quarter three, there were, as per the report of quarter three, there were still monies that were not spent. So my question was relating to why we still had stockouts on condoms. Yes, please.
Okay, I think is that the only question? Are there other questions?
One last one, Doc.
Okay, so my question is around funding for young people with comorbidities, just because we know that the numbers have started increasing. So especially that we're transitioning almost 80% to DTG. I've always been wondering what happens to a young person who is living with HIV, is on DTG, has TB, for example, and maybe has epilepsy. Because we know that DTG interacts with all these drugs. So how does that look like? Are we planning for this young people? Because I saw that for just in terms of TB, we have allocated some money. So what are we doing in terms of comorbidities for people living with HIV, especially young ones?
Thank you very much. Maybe I answer now. Maybe I get anyway.
You cut it. Yeah, cool. I think the microphone and the phone was working well. Yeah. Put it on loud. Yeah.
The second one. So they interact with each other. We call those drug-drug interactions. And when we also know medicine interact with the food, know the drug-food interaction. So there are a number of options of medicine. If we find that, for example, we cannot use this particular drug in this patient because of another drug they are taking, there are other options explored. Let's see how there is a medicine we use to treat, for example, TB called rifampicin. Rifampicin reduces the effectiveness of so many drugs. So in cases like that, we may choose to increase the dose of that drug that tends to be reduced, or we may use a different drug altogether. So we should not get worried. There are a number of options that are available. I think that's what I can answer without going too much into like the science. So there are options. That's not the only recommended line, but then we can use other drugs as well. Then the other question was on unspent money. And then how come we still have, we had problems with the stock levels of condoms? When you look at the presentation, it may look like, yes, there's a lot of unspent money, but most of that money is committed already. It's committed in terms of commodity where it arrives. So it may look like it's a lot of money still unspent, but it's going to be used up very quickly soon. Then for the gaps in condoms, I don't know whether Mr. Malo Banda is on the line. I think it's much more capable of commenting, but yeah, except for me to say that whatever commodity has been low in stock, we've taken note and we've been proactively managing this to ensure that we have the commodity. So MOH Global Fund are not the only partners, we have a number of partners. So sometimes gaps to occur when the interested commodities don't come in. But I think for a specific time, what Mr. Ban round of this scope, it should be what I can say for now. Thank you, Mr. President, members.
Thanks very much, Doc, for those responses. Are you still on standby? Should we have other questions?
Yes,
okay, thanks a lot.
Okay, so back to the boss. Thank you so much for the questions. I hope the responses were good enough. But we can also jot down our questions because it's a packed agenda. We're supposed to go up to lunch. This is already past 11. Yeah, almost half past. So I think what I propose is we jot down our questions and we can pass them on to me. We'll pass them on to peers. We'll be able to share the response and we can continuously follow up. I think this meeting also, this forum is not, the conversation shouldn't begin and end here. I think the idea is to continue interacting. There are people that continuously send questions that continue engaging in throughout the process, like for instance, Philemon. Yeah. Even yesterday he was asking questions around the PRs and the relationship and the agility in dialogue. So this is the forum where those questions can be asked. So that question you asked actually, your presentation here, pertaining to the next grant, and the implementation arrangement, so I'm sure to be clarified. So let's continue engaging. If there's anything that is unclear, we can continue asking because we interact with the PRs every quarter. We have a number of opportunities to with the committee meetings as well as through the full CCM meeting itself while they come through. So let's jot down those questions and we'll try and utilize our platforms to continue engaging. For now, I will propose that we move on to the next agenda item, which is an update on the next grant, so that we can clear everything that the PRs have pertained to. Then we'll break for tea after that presentation.
This one's Francis. Okay. Oh, okay, it's okay. Switch off. Oh, right. Chair, if you may allow me to sit so that I can sit properly here, and this is in Excel, so PowerPoint, so it requires a bit of attention. So what I'm giving is what we call an implementation arrangement map. Okay, this particular one is an implementation arrangement for child for HIV/TB grant. Therefore, this is what Charles is proposing, that they will handle the relationships through grant agreement with their sub-recipients and lead sub-recipients. So if we start on top there, you can see the CCM is on top there in the triangle. Okay, so you see there's a lot of relationships through these lines, the dotted lines, the solid lines, and the colored lines. So our PR task is here. Okay, there's a relationship with us and the Global Fund, of course, but also with the CCM and the Ministry of Health. Okay, so you see that even though this is an implementation arrangement map for CHARS, it also shows the relationship with the other PR, the public PR or the government PR. So let's look on the left side, right up under CHARS. So CHARS is planning to have 8 FBO or faith-based organizations sub-recipients. Okay. Then CHARS is planning to have 8 civil society organizations or secular civil society organizations sub-recipients. Further, CHARS is planning to have 2 lead sub-recipients and 2 lead sub-recipients for FBOs. Now, lead recipients here means that they subcontract or they sub-grant. They coordinate implementers, okay? They do not implement, they coordinate implementers and they sub-grant to those implementers. So let's just see below what that means. So below then, the lead sub-recipients who actually have grant agreements with its sub-recipients. So at this stage, we don't know how many there will be, but we will learn later next year in Q1 from CHARS, because there's a competition that is going on right now. And by the way, we were informed yesterday by CHARS that you saw that, right? Yeah. So that's great. Yeah. So it was supposed to expire on the 22nd of this month. They've extended that advert to the 4th of January. So that gives you a lot of time to participate in these competitions. Okay? So under SSR, for both civil society organizations and FBOs, there will be community-based organizations. And some of you belong to some of those organizations. So you'll be able to participate if you are directly under the sub-recipients, FPOs and society. There will be at that level more CBOs. So that's a lot of CBOs right there. We don't know the numbers right now, but I think there will be a lot more CBOs because of the involvement, because of these 16 here and these 4 here. Okay, so you see that below the CBOs, there are some of the concentration or focus areas or programs expected to be implemented. Adolescent girls and young women, as well as people living with HIV. Okay, so now if we go back up again, we look at the right side collaboration there with CHARS. And under MOH, you see that there's medical stores. Now, the government MOH has medical stores, right? So under medical stores, there are hubs or small mini medical stores around the country in certain districts. Okay, so CHARS happens to support 3 of those, and therefore that's why you see these line relationships coming to medical stores there. The green there means there's money flows going to medical stores to those particular hubs. If you look at the other integration that CHARS has is through the Ministry of General Education. That is really leveraging the resources that we have from Global Fund. And you see, through general education and through the DEDs, CHARS implements adapted school programs for girls, okay, to ensure that the girls remain in school. Okay, so CHARS is working with government, not just with the Ministry of health, but in general education. But CHAS also supports, you see, money flows to the provincial health offices also at that level. And that money, when it goes to PHOs, it goes to DHOs, and then you heard Mr. Kachomi mention about the facilities, about 84 facilities, which will grow to 100 facilities. You see that line directly coming down in green? That's money going to mission hospitals and certain private hospitals. So in the next grant, CHAS is planning to support 100 health facilities. And of course, the interventions or focus areas will be the general population and people living with HIV affected by TB. Okay. Similarly, if you go to the malaria grant, you see again CHAS is there, Global Fund up there, CCM up there. Okay. Then you see the relationship again to MOH, again to the medical stores, hubs that CHAS is supporting, and the PHOs under malaria. CHAS is supporting 3 provinces in malaria. Okay, that's Eastern, Southern, and Northwestern province. Am I correct, Michael? Yes. So these 3 provinces, CHAS is supporting, and hence you see that support going to these provinces. Similarly, if the support is when PHOs trickle down to DHOs and to facilities. And of course, CHAS plans also to actually implement some malaria grants through civil society organizations. But at this point in time, the CHAS is working with, like MOH, they are working with the National Malaria Elimination Center at Chainama to identify these civil society organizations who are actually working in communities around the area program. So we are yet to know who these are from both MOH and CHAS. So colleagues, the target focus area is general population and community. That's why I was talking about high-risk spraying happening in homes, in rural areas, or outlying areas, as well as in very urban areas. And now we're doing the mass campaign, and these mosquito nets actually have to reach the communities, and sometimes they even use schools to distribute them. So we hope there is of general education. So basically, what I'm giving you share is the implementation arrangements for the plan, the implementation arrangements for CHAS for next year up to 2023. And if there are any changes, the CHAS is under obligation to actually inform the CCM of any changes. Thank you. I think I'll pause here for now before I go to the MOH implementation.
So is that clear? Do we understand the flow? Because most of the times people ask for how can we participate, how can we partake of the global pancake at country level. So this is the how. So do you see your place there as organization? Although I think there's many things that PRs have always tried chance that the people, the civil society, we complain a lot about not being involved, we're not seeing the global fund money, we're not getting the money. When adverts are out, very few civil society organizations again respond to the call. So they are not going to come knocking on your door to come and deliver a check or to come and force you to apply. So the advert is out. So it's up to all of us here that are interested to actually apply. And we don't continue asking the question, how do we partake? How can we get how can we implement the global fund money as well? So this is the how, and the advert is in the papers, and we'll also ensure that the advert is made available on our website. We were launching yesterday, so you can easily access it. If you have any questions, certain questions that we asked in advance as a constituency, and other questions as well, and the responses are provided by CHAS. But even right now, based on the extension, thank you so much for the extension. You preempted our agenda item, our major agenda item, because there were a number of submissions from within the constituency around the deadline is too tight. Are they going to extend? My response was, I don't think they're extending, because I think even from the CCM research, we're talking about them starting early grant implementation. So I don't think they're extending. So I was surprised when I saw the extension, and I felt relieved that you preempted the major question. Yeah. So that is that. So if it's clear, please let's do that. So up to sub-recipient level and lead sub-recipients, those are out right now. Then later on, the lead sub-recipients will also advertise to also engage sub-recipients. So there's a number of layers.
To CBOs.
Yeah, up to CBO level. And now there's even malaria. So I think I also want to take this opportunity to encourage the organizations that are youth focused and youth run to also take the interest of getting involved in malaria conversation. Because very few of us are participating in malaria and TB. Young people know a lot about HIV. But if I ask questions around TB, very few, maybe Zoe will say something around TB because she's studying medicine. And malaria as well, very few of us. I know we feel like we know malaria because at one point or another, we may have patients. Yeah. So if there are no questions, then we can move to the MOH implementation arrangement. Okay. Yoka? Yeah, Philemon. There was a question yesterday that I needed to ask here.
Thank you once more. My question goes to Charles, and there's been a background that Charles is more focused on faith-based organizations than civil society. I think there were some advocacy campaigns to say, why can't we have also a PR which is more on the civil society arrangement? So, with the previous recommendation that Charles continues under the Ministry of Health, we as the youth, as you make a call for like, we need 8 civil society organizations to apply, and of course there are some guidelines there, which a good number of youth organizations cannot meet. What policy have you put in place to ensure that maybe there's 30 or 40% allocation to youth organizations, starting from the sub-recipient level and not at the CPO level?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question and the comment from Siwa. Siwa, I told you that I'm one of you, I'm you. So we thought ahead of you, and that's why the extension is there. So that we could, so that agenda item could be cleared. Yeah. The second question is a good question, and it's good that you bring it up again so that we dispel those myths. And I would like to categorically dispel that myth in this meeting, that the Charles funds only more of FBOs than CSOs. Okay, I would like to categorically dispel that myth. Among you here, we even have ZYP there from the chair, which is funded for youth activities, and I believe ZYP is not a faith-based organization, right? Yes, he goes to church, he prays, yes, but we are not saying in that context. Because faith-based organizations, mind you, are not different from the other civil society organizations. The only difference is that they are guided by particular maybe church mother bodies or belong to certain church mother bodies. Let's say, for example, like Youth Alive. Okay? But they are registered as the local NGOs. Okay, just like the other CSOs. But under this grant, if I was to show you, I think even now it's somewhere within a laptop, the funding that we gave to CSOs was more than we gave to FBOs. Okay? So we have different legs of funding there. We have treatment sites. Treatment sites is a health facility, the 89. And I believe we are not talking about that money which goes to treatment sites, because that's money for ARVs, VMMC, and actual medical procedures and demand creation for activities around those health facilities, which we usually refer to as the outreach activities, either to do demand creation or to perform outreach services out there. So that is a different leg, okay? Under the treatment sites, I can say yes. There we can say more goes to faith-based hospitals because they're the majority. Mission hospitals were set up for the 1960s and the 1800s, even before certain district hospitals. But even amongst those 89, we have, I think, close to 11 or so, which are either private hospitals, money hospitals, or community-based organizations. I'll give you an example. Zatulet. Okay. Zatulet was a civil society organization funded by Zinan. We have CSO. Okay. We have Kalulushi Vine Hospital. We have Konkola Vine Hospital. We have Lusaka Trust. We have Victoria Hospital. We have Coptic. Coptic is a faith-based institution, but I'm sure even in here somebody has been to Coptic. A lot of people visit. Okay. We have Family Health International under the hospitals. Okay. So even there is a mix, but the mix is based on the structure. Okay, because the private hospitals, for example, like Lusaka Trust, Victoria, Family Health, we had to do a lot of due diligence and put mechanisms in place so that they are not charging you for things that should be free. Okay, so that's one leg on the hospital. So we can't put compare against that. The other one, MSL, and what is clear, straightforward. But when we get to what we are calling CSOs and FBOs, okay, we currently have, under the current grant, there are two lead sub-recipients, two leads. There are only two lead sub-recipients. Both of these lead sub-recipients are civil society organizations, NGOCC and DAP. And the lead sub-recipients get the highest funding from the grant. Okay? NGOCC has 15 sub-recipients. I've been told in the past to say, NGOCC only funds its members. Mr. Chikato, we were together in the meeting. They say, show of hands who are NGOCC members. Some of the sub-recipients are not NGOCC members. They just advertised and based on expertise and competence went and funded out. Equally, DAP is not a membership organization, but has funded CBOs, okay? So even in terms of value, when you compare the FBOs we are talking about under this grant, very few, it's actually Youth Alive. It's actually, I think we have Kafi, we have Kafi which is in Karwe, and then you have ECR and a few others. They're I think less than, okay, those were about 15. Actually, yeah, we're 15. We're split, I think, 8 and 7. But the major part of the funding is with the CSOs. Okay. So that's why I was saying that let me categorically dispel that myth so that those who are in this room can actually be my advocates. After this, when somebody whispers that, you can tell them, no, that's not true. Okay? So that is one part. Two, when we look at the grant which is coming there, clearly you can see the split that has been done. We have said this time around, because even the FBOs now also have been complaining to say, why, how come you've given so much money to CSOs at our expense? Because as the FBO, CBOs, we have not been able to access money. Okay? So we have said, look, let us split fair. Let us have two lead sub-recipients for CSOs, for FBOs. Let us have 8 CSOs implement, and let us also have 8 FBOs that can do direct implementation. This is what we proposed to the CCM, the SPI committee, and it was approved and it went to the Global Fund. And the Global Fund actually pushed back this, not the Secretariat, but the Global Fund GAC on board, saying there are too many sub-recipients. Are we going to manage under this? Okay? We assured them as a PR to say, one, we will manage. Two, as we go along, we'll try and look for efficiency savings so that we still push towards implementation of the sub-recipients. Because like I mentioned to you, the grant is so heavy on procurements. Okay? Under sub-recipients alone, we only have about $23 million for the 3 years. That $23 million, you can remove $10.6 million for the treatment sites, which are going to the hospitals, the 100 hospitals. Okay, already it's coming to almost half. You can remove $3.6 million that is earmarked for medical stores. Okay, you remove another $3.9 million that is earmarked for the schools, the 55 schools. Okay, which is supporting the 7,000 girls. There's another $371,000 that is clearly earmarked for CSO coordination. It leaves us with about $4.5 million to go around to these implementers who we are selecting here. So already you see the cake starts being split. You know? So I needed you to at least have that understanding. The cry on the ground, we expect the Global Fund. The biggest cry that has been there is that we are not able to participate. We need more sub-recipients. That has been the fight on the ground. But this experience as well is going to teach us whether this is going to be the best way, or if this way is going to be expensive and cannot achieve the right impact, then of course, for the next grant, we may have to review. Because spreading money too thinly as well is a bit of a problem. You know, we have 2,000 questions. We have an emergency in Livingstone. And I say, let us count how many we are in here. Let's split the 2,000 questions. I don't know how many we are in here. Let's say maybe we are 20 or so. We get to how much? 100 kwacha each. And then we say, let us rush and try to get to Livingstone to sort out the problem. We'll start off from this room, but we'll all fail to reach. Those who go to intercity, they'll be told, even if you pay, we can't take you. The money is deep. Wait for you to try and hike at night, maybe if you don't have people. Others may go and stand on the road, try to hike. Others will go to the airport, they'll be told, can you go and raise more money? Others will say, can we put together, it will be 400 kwacha, but they'll fail to get there with the fuel. Whereas if I had that 2,000 and I said, and we agreed in here, we said, who are the two most competitive, who are the two who have the best advantage to go and sort the problem out for us? And we quickly agreed that 2,000 we split, one pin, one pin. Quickly they'll go. By next time they'll be calling us and saying, we have resolved that problem. If it was the patient who was sick at home, we have managed to move him to the hospital, the other person has gone to get food. So you can achieve more sometimes by agreeing to say, let's focus, let us support those who are selected. Unfortunately, especially within the civil society space, I must mention, if I don't receive money as a CSO, it means the PRI is bad. Even if 4 of my friends receive, we even start saying, you know, that has been the unfortunate part. So this is what we are proposing as the implementation arrangement, but still, remember, some will be chosen, some will not. There are few is those who do not make it to support those who are in the front line and say, oh, we'll wait for our chance next time. What were our gaps? A, B, C, D. Maybe we can improve our gaps. You know, the next time we are on top. I hope I've comprehensively responded. I haven't responded to your question. Okay.
I'll handle the first one. I was talking about having the CSO as a PR and also Chas as a PR. I'll give an example of a family where the father goes to maybe Roman Catholic, then the mother also goes to a different church. Then I'm their son. I'll be confused to which one should I take? So I think Charles would be better placed to work with faith-based organizations, and then CSOs also work with CSOs. That is my thinking. I think CSOs would have a better understanding on some approaches than how a faith-based organization would make an approach. An adolescent working with a faith-based organization will be told to stay away from contraceptives and promote behavioral change. Whereas a CSO would tell adolescents to use contraceptives if they can't abstain. So already there's a contradiction. The second, my question was based on the 8 sub-recipients. You have a deliberate policy which clearly states to say 40% will go towards youth organizations, because we have already the other two lead recipients who can be providing capacity building to the youth organizations, who mostly they would be said to lack the capacity to manage the grant. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm privileged to be chairing the SBI committee, which is the Strategic Plan and Investment Committee. So all these things run through that committee before they are actually final. So first question around, so Charles, I'm sure they'll speak for themselves, except just a reminder that Charles is the CSO. Okay, but they'll speak for themselves to clarify more. But otherwise, they're a civil society organization, except they're bigger than most of us. That is one. For youth organizations, if you remember the last grant, I don't know if you were involved in one, the last grant, this current grant, right? As youth organizations, we pushed for funding specifically for youth, which was labeled youth. And on our own, we decided that money should sit with Ministry of Health. There was money allocated for 10 organizations that were youth focused. Where we missed it was on the definition of who we wanted. Was it a youth-led organization or youth focused? So we went with youth focused organization. Ministry of Health, in the current grant, they did sub-grant under that line. Unfortunately, most of the organizations that they gave, I think this is a conversation I've had with them several times, even at CCM level. I think the Lord here can bear me witness. They gave organizations such as World Vision. Okay? We have Red Cross. We have CIDAS. We have DHOs, District Health Officers. Those are some of the organizations. There are few real youth organizations that have received this money. So unfortunately, at the time when all this was happening, because they took forever to actually fund, the process took almost 2 years. So the organizations that are implementing this fund for youth had about a year to do the work they were supposed to do within 3 years. So there was that gap. So we have a lot of power as a constituency to decide what we want. I'll report again here that in the next grant, that particular line is continuing for CBOs that are supposed to be youth organizations. So what we've said, I think this was a heated issue at CCM and even during the funding request process. We were saying, can we move that money from that line from Ministry of Health? Let's move it to CHAS. Because we thought we erred as a youth constituency to give that money to Ministry of Health. Because their process of procurement, engaging these organizations, takes forever. And they were saying it's their system. So we thought if it's a system, it means that even the next one, if it's the same system, it will take 2 years before they give the youth organizations the funds. So we're pushing for that. It was a heated issue. And we couldn't win completely, but we gave conditions that if it continues there, the ministry needs to put in some corrective measures. For instance, you can't give that money to World Vision and call them a youth organization. Even the US government is trying to move resources to the locals. But then why should our own PRs be continuously empowering the international organization? It doesn't make sense. I know it's easy to work with a well-built, capacitated organization because they'll give you the reports, they'll give you everything you need on time. But also there's a downside. If I'm a bigger organization, I've got so much funding. You bring your money to me. It looks like pocket change. I might not even implement your interventions. Okay, but if you give it to a youth organization that really needs that money, they will perform and they understand the need, they understand the gap, so they'll be able to do something. So I just thought I need to clarify that there is money labeled youth and it will continue in the next grant, but it's sitting under Ministry of Health still, and it's not sitting under Charles. So for Charles, I think they can also be able to clarify whether there is a further criteria that is speaking to or how they select the sub-recipients. Do they actually look at youth who is women, who is what? Or is it just a flat surface not expected to ever to implement? I hope I've provided a bit of clarity.
Thank you very much, Chair. So the first one, whether Charles is suitable to handle CSO funding. Yes, I think Charles is very, very suitable to handle CSO funding. And we have been handling CSO funding for quite a long time. Charles has been involved in this space, I think, since the early 80s, when the HIV pandemic started. And we have successfully subgranted a number of CSOs without any particular challenges. Like Chair said, I think when it comes to implementation of activities, they implemented within the national framework, within the national guidelines. So we have national guidelines for sexual reproductive health, for example. And we do not implement outside those guidelines. Okay. The constituencies that form chants, 17 church mother bodies. Yes, from there we have the Catholics and we have the other Pentecostal churches. For others, the Pentecostal churches, they don't distribute condoms. Even the health facilities, they don't distribute condoms. So we implement with the respect of that person's faith or values. We don't implement MSM and LGBT activities because they're legal in the country. They are not within the framework. So one wouldn't expect us to carry out an illegality as a legally registered faith that goes to the Ministry of Health. That definitely will say no. You see? That is why money for populations and the like sit with the Ministry of Health and not because they are the government themselves. If they can implement something which is not within the law, they are interacting with the lawmakers and they're getting that approved. Okay? Things like the SRH, we are actually implementing SRH under the same grant. We have capacity building of peer educators to tertiary institutions of the same thing they're talking about. Of people discussing issues of unsafe abortion, people discussing issues to do with family planning. We're not encouraging abortions, no? Because the national law, the law, Dr. Miller will tell you as a medical practitioner, you can only perform an abortion under certain specific circumstances, which must be met by the law. Okay? So we are implementing within that realm. Then when we talk about implementers, I did mention to you, the CSOs were implementing. We have CHIP, Child Fund, PAWEZA, NZP Plus, TAU, Young Women's Christian Association, Zambia Youth Platform, Childline Zambia. We have CCZ, Expanded Church Response, CAFI I mentioned earlier, Youth Alive, Hope Worldwide. So from these already, when I look at Childline Zambia, the main focus is working. The youth and adolescents. When I look at ZYP, who are they working with? When I look at Young Women's Christian Association, who are they working with and who are they focusing on? It's mainly with the young people. The second question you raised in terms of do we have policies, like say 40% of the fund should go towards youth activities. That is now not up to us as church. That should be done at the country proposal. So, Mr. Chikatula there, who is sitting, and your CCM representative, would have to lobby at the country proposal. If for us, remember it's a national proposal implemented. If it comes and says 40% of the activities must be targeted towards the youth, then we implement that 40%. Because those decisions are not being made now, they are made at the country proposal. At the country proposal, the entire budget of the $262 million is broken down by cents, by dollar. There are no lump sum amounts in them. To say, oh, PR, go and make a decision. No. They are in detail. What cost category is this? Who will be implementing this? Is it sub-recipient? Is it yourself? It's broken down in detail. So if it comes like that from them, definitely who are we except to abide by what is sitting in them? So that for that particular question, I would encourage you and the fellow youth to lobby, especially during the funding request time. And this was my area submission. You remember when I was talking about the balance treatment and prevention. It's a very valid point that you raised. You see, from the envelope of those activities or interventions being put in place, then we'll scratch a bit there, scratch a bit, without achieving impact. So I encourage you that during things like the funding requests and the likes, we continue to engage and lobby that more money goes towards some of these prevention and care activities. Okay? Rather than us having a huge load just sitting with treatment. Because the rate at which we are going now is actually scary. For me, who has seen these grants from I think around 2005 till now, you keep seeing the space for prevention and care keeps getting smaller and smaller. But we need both, for all the three, the treatment, prevention, and care to deal with HIV/AIDS activity. I submit. I hope this time I've answered your question.
So, thank you very much. I'm looking at time. There's snack there. It's 12 now. And I still have a presentation for you. And we are supposed to finish at 12:30. Just to let you know that research in academia yesterday, 12:30 they finished their meeting. Research and academia. Yeah. So now we are going to that. We have a snack there. At this point in time, the chair was outside. I think we need to relieve our PRs because what is remaining next is really an updates from ourselves as CCM to you of what has been happening this year. If you recall, last time we met last year in November, so we want to update you what we've done in around the funding request this year.
All right. Now, thank you so much for coming, Charles. Thank you so much for making time. We appreciate the responses, and the bigger things is to the extension. So I'm hoping that members of civil society will be able to take advantage of that. Let's use the opportunity to respond, so they have a record number of applicants. So at next year they'll just say, okay, so I think there was a good overwhelming response. Okay, so thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Chair, and fellow youth. Enjoy the rest of the meeting.
Okay, so we can now break off for tea. Let's grab something, and I propose that we just grab and come and sit so to proceed. So just ignore them. I apologize. I just get that the PR is over. So there are 1,600 people in here. But I think there are more. There are people that told me based on like race.
or we call them county districts and provinces. And also for those organizations which are for the youth who have organization, they can also register there. So you have both organization and also individuals. The other thing that we want to work on moving forward on the next phases is to work on a platform where on the same platform that will be a place for knowledge sharing. So it will be a youthful, fresh place whereby people can go and have conversation, dialogue, and use that type of information to do advocacy. Then the key is to try to leverage on technology, so combining what young people are using, WhatsApp and Facebook, to use the same platform for not communication, for dialogue, for sharing information and experiences. So combining those two so that that can happen. So those are the areas we are working on. Besides that, we are repackaging content, having useful information so that we can push the agenda of the young people forward. I normally say we are a big percent. We are 70% below 30, the cross of Africa, and I'm sure in Zambia it's almost the same, if not even higher. And so we are not the future, we are the now. And so we have to put our best forward, step forward and give leadership in some of these things around technology that we know about. So those are some of the areas we'll be working on. The other exciting things that are coming up around capturing data, having an app on the phone. I've had some people talking about contact tracing and it's not happening, and we have so many young people who can do that. Using technology, better. I've done proposals around that. We are here and we can do these things faster. We have energy, and so those are the things we're going to be putting in place. And we're very excited to with ZYP, but also to connect with everyone here. We're also trying to bring regional pieces. So ZYP works in this side of the region. We have other organizations that works in different regions to see how those big regional organizations can partner. And those are the innovations, but also ideas that we want to bring on the table. But not only us, but also listening to people like you so that we can improve that. So those I want to say. So please go to the website. It was launched yesterday. Still fresh. Visit there and get to see what is there. Thank you so much.
People are always asking, how do you provide feedback? You know, in the CCM, how often do you get back to us? It's almost impossible because then I do not have funding to bring everyone together to talk to you before a CCM meeting every quarter and then reconvene you again to tell you what has gone on within the CCM after the meeting. There's no funding for that. If you look at this year as an example, this is the only meeting we're having. But I've had a lot of CCM meetings this year because of the funding request here. So we're thinking that give us something like that, we can update the calls for proposals for PRs, any updates around global fund, what is happening, all that information will be available there. If there's something that you think would be of interest, then it will be highlighted. It will be one of the things that we'll be needing on the website, so we're able to go there. The platform itself, you can actually ask questions there, and answers will be provided. Because we are a platform, so we might not have the answers to every question that you ask. But because we're a platform and we are linked to a number of other processes, we'll be able to get the answers for you. An example is because we are on the CCM as ZYP, even though it's me there, but we're there as ZYP, representing all the young people in the country. So apart from the CCM, we do the paper processes. We also chair the paper civil society advisory group. So all these processes are key processes in the country, but we want to make this information available. If we're aware of what is going on from paper perspective, which is the US government, in this country. We're aware of what is going on. We'll give you an update there. You can find it within from the website, and they're able to make use of the information without necessarily you having to your phone to call SIM, because not everyone has my number. Not everyone even knows where to find you or how to get hold of me. So we're thinking that the website will be able to save that able to provide you feedback.
Can Nairobi come down? I can move. I can move. I'm still moving anymore. It was around the street. So, this one is for your information, and I would like to bring to your attention what we did this year as your CCM to ensure that we are where we are today and how we are moving forward with that supported by the global fund. But specifically for us, what did we do? So I will start you right from the beginning so that you can understand how we moved this year and why having constituency is late in the year. It's because of we're not making processes. We are with them. Okay. The genesis was in December last year. Specifically on the 18th of December, we received what we call an allocation letter, a country allocation letter that tells you that you are eligible to actually be supported by the Global Fund. And what does eligibility here mean? Or that you comply to receive support from the Global Fund. Okay? So, to be eligible to receive support from the Global Fund, you must actually have a high disease burden. Okay? This information comes through from your grants, your performance, from your national strategic plans. It comes through from your surveys, from your research, and everything. This comes through also from our partners, from World Health Organization, from UNA, from PEPFAR, all these partners. This information comes, Global Fund has this information. So, as Zambia, we are high burden. You see here, high burden in terms of the disease. Okay? So, for that reason, we qualify. And that's the green tea there you're saying. Then, the Global Fund looks at the income level of the population. Okay. And the Zambia, we are low income country. But supported by the Global Fund in many diseases. This is the category that Global Fund uses. And the way Where do they get the information of the low income classification? IMF, they get those monies from there, and of course certain agencies of the UN. Okay. So going forward, country allocation, other than looking at all these other factors, they have a formula. Global Fund has a formula which they use to calculate to come up with a country allocation. What I mean when I keep saying country allocation, I mean the envelope that we receive as a country that tells us how much we're going to receive the next 3 years. Okay, that's the country allocation. And the Global Fund has a formula which actually applies these factors here that you can see here. It is which I mentioned, income organization other than the Global Fund, and of course the minimum requirement level that Global Fund expects you to meet. And I'll talk more about that. Then there's the qualitative factors. The Global Fund looks at the performance in the last 3 years. And so if you look at grant performance, if you look at impact, if you look at increasing infectious rate, absorptive capacity, all these are connected to the indicators that you were just discussing when Kaluswika pointed out the PR performance or the grant performance for the country. So they look at the absorptive capacity. You saw that was the first slide actually. Okay. Then they look at the risk, not just of the 2 PRs or the performance that happened in the past 3 years, but they also look at the risk as a country. As a country. So when all these factors are put together, then the calculation is done, qualitative analysis is done. Then they come up with the country allocation. The country allocation is contained in the country allocation letter. The country allocation letter is sent to the CCM chair, who receives that, and that is copied to me. And also, I now get that and send it to all partners and to all CCM members and their alternates, because it has all the information. And in there, we were told in December last year that we need to meet 15% as a country, 15% as co-financing to demonstrate the willingness to pay, right? To demonstrate commitment. Oh, it's gone again. It's temperamental. The cameraman is operating. Okay, yeah. So here, I'm just emphasizing on in the country allocation letter. The country allocation letter had what they call a program split, indicative program split. The indicative program split means the amount of money that has been given to you, but split in the 3 diseases. That is the program split. So then we were informed in the letter that they were going to allocate 233 million to HIV. They were going to allocate 65.1 million to malaria, and they were going to allocate 16.5 million to there. And when we received this, we had to actually debate whether we go by are split, or we come up with their own, our own. You can actually if you are eligible to receive support, it means that you need to look at what I mentioned earlier, the disease burden, the income level, adjusted for qualitative factors. Then in there we are also told the types of approach or application that we needed to do. For Zambia, for malaria, we were told you need to go for program continuation. For HIV TB, we needed to go for full review application. So what does that mean? What that means is that for full review application, we needed to review our strategic plans for those two diseases. Okay? We needed to review and make sure that it's also peer reviewed other than just at government level. Remember, the diseases are managed by the government, the ministry. So National AIDS Council, working with the AIDS program at Ministry of Health, reviewed the National AIDS Strategic Framework. Do you know that document? As you, do you know that document? The NACI. Yeah? Okay. Then the National TB Strategic Plan was also revised to make sure that it's in line with our 7th National Development Plan. It's in line with our SDGs. I think someone was interested in that. Our SDGs also in line with the continuation again. It's tricky. Malaria is sometimes it's seasonal. I was looking at the recent map before going to Sorowezi to go and spot check what is going on in Sorowezi. There are spikes. There's the spike in Northwestern, on the Copper Belt, Luabula, Northern, but Luapula and Northwestern, the spikes are higher there. Okay. So that was country allocation. Then co-financing. You are awarded upon demonstrating increase of the co-financing share. So you are given a threshold of 15%, I showed you 15%. But you need to demonstrate increase. Now, we had a problem there because I don't know how many of you looked at our budget, but I was impressed with this research at academia yesterday. One said, but the budget was reduced, and indeed the budget to the health sector was reduced, and that wasn't good. However, we still passed in that increase in the health sector through some other activities such as infrastructure, building of infrastructure and health facilities. Also, we have been increased our HR, Human Resource for Health, HRH. We are recruiting more nurses now and other community health workers or community-based volunteers. So we were able to demonstrate that. But we also demonstrated that we are actually contributing to the procurement of commodities, essential commodities such as ARVs, malarial drugs, test kits, and also TB drugs, which are essential drugs also. So between MOF and MOH, they were able to calculate that increase there. So we passed. So based on the TRP recommendations and GAC approval, depends on the country's income classification. And there's that process later, and GAC means the grant approval committee. The other one, opportunity, was the prioritized above allocation request, or fondly known as the PAR. In this one, the way this one works is that we had to submit it together with the main application. What does this mean actually? What this means is that you have your ShopRite list, right? You want to go to ShopRite, you have your ShopRite list. But on your ShopRite list there are some essentials. Then there are others there. Maybe you even put biscuits there. But you probably need a detergent more than a biscuit, right? So you find that some are essentials on that ShopRite list. So what Global says is that we have given you the main allocation. So can you put priorities in the main allocation? But if you do have other priorities that you think essential, 30th June by midnight, submitted those through my office, and they went. So what happens is that now they put the power on the side. When money is available, then they will say, oh, Zambia, we have some money. Remember in the power, you put this and this and this. Okay, can you revise your website and budget of the power so that we give you this money? But since the Global Fund gives the main allocation only once per 3 years, where does the money for the power come from? Okay, because if Global Fund gives you money, do not expect them to give you extra money. You are not the only country they are supporting. So you have to work within that money. So where does power money come from? Power money comes from other countries that have underperformed. If there are grants around the world that have underperformed, the Global Fund is smart enough to take away money from those grants, from those countries, and put it in a basket. They'll keep growing in the basket, growing in the basket. Then suddenly, when they see that all is enough to be shared, then they put you up for fund for your manager, they'll tell the chair to say, oh, there's some money. And then I'll ask the PRs to quickly revise the work plans and budget for those particular. So you can maybe you wanted, for argument's sake, quantitatively, you wanted 10 ARVs, right? But then these 10 RBs maybe are not enough for the next 3 years. Then you say, oh, this is true. Because quantification now came, the report says we should have put it 50 years. So then you say, okay, we'll put 5 more for RBs. That's how it works. So the other one is catalytic investment. Now, we all remember the word catalytic from chemistry in secondary school, right? What does it mean? What does it mean? Sorry? Say that again. Speeds up, catch weight speeding, yes. So also so you find that this catalytic investment is actually prescribed by the global fund of the country. And they pick certain focus areas and they say, if you did this in this and this and this and that, we think that you actually post impact. If you catalyze this area, focus area, you actually post the impact. And so those areas are key population, are HRH or human resource for health, are adolescent girls and young women, yourselves, are finding TB cases. TB cases are very elusive. And I think TB cases, to find them, you need to go to communities. What type of interventions are you going to do to find those cases in communities? The idea of going to the hospital this year was a very tricky one. Was a very, very tricky one. So people were not going to the hospital because they think, catch me with COVID, they will quarantine me, you know. So we need to boost this going forward through the catalytic funding. We need to come with smart interventions of how we can find cases in community. Now, the funding request is continuous, so it doesn't stop. Just as the country dialogue, what we are doing here is country dialogue. CCM constituency consultative meeting are country dialogues. So that continues. The light blue, that's the application process itself. So the air is popping out from the two circles. That's the funding request application process. So it started there. Yeah, you see here, it starts with the national strategic plans. From national strategic plans, they need to be ready before the country allocation comes, before that letter comes. So when you receive now the letter, you do the program split, you write that letter I talked about. When you do that, then it goes, you develop the funding request and it goes to Global Fund. When it goes to the Global Fund, the first instance is called screening. Screening means looking at the application and all its annexes to make sure that whatever you are quoting in the narrative is actually present as a key annex. And also that the data you are reflecting in the narrative actually is making sense and it was triangulated. Triangulated means that we have our national data, it agrees with the UN family, it agrees with the USG, it agrees with other partners. Because if it's contradicting, global fund will say, your HMIS is saying this or your DHIS is saying this. But even if it's saying this, we need to make sure that we are speaking the same language. So that screening is done for a period of time, and that is an interaction between Geneva and the writing team and the two PRs through my office, through the CCM secretariat. Okay, and then when this process is done, then it's submitted to the model. You can't even do corruption with it. Right? So these ones, they review, they come up with issues. When they come up with the issues, is thrown back to the fund portfolio manager sitting here, and it's thrown back to the country through my office, and I throw it back to the writing teams and the two PRs. Okay? And these issues we must respond to. So we responded to those issues and we passed. How did we pass? We were informed, oh, you did well, now you are ready to go to grant making. And that is the grant making. So we submitted the grant approval committee, and they reviewed also, came back with some issues, gave back TRP, and so on. And then there again, we passed. And these guys, these three guys here are very, very difficult. So when you are told by TRP that go to grant making, then you know you've done well as a country. Then when GAC gives to the board, then you know, that just happened. So the board indeed approved. As I speak to you, the grant agreements came to the country. The grant agreements were signed because of COVID. We can't have Global Fund coming down here to sign those agreements together with us because of COVID. Remember, for them, it has really hit them bad. It's not like us. They can't even meet like this. They can't. So they sent the document to say, we can only sign when the country signs. So then the chair signed it, and the civil society member co-signed with the chair. So yesterday and Wednesday, the two players sent back their documents. What does that mean? We are here. We are here, grant signing. It means now they have to sign on the other side. And then we can go back to grant implementation starting January. Okay? The process I've explained to you is demonstrated by this. From like planting a small seedling, it grows, you nurture it through country dialogue as a CCM, and then from there you water it, it becomes a full grown plant where you can eat your beans. I think it's like beans. That are actually controlled by of the health in the health sector. So the process of funding is led by the CCM. We coordinate the CCM coordinates through my office and through its substructures. And actually, your constituency is actually here. Then the grant making process in Geneva is led by through my office. We work together there. Then when implementation comes for 3 years, it's now led by the CCM and the PRs. And that is the country dialogue illustrated. Okay, and it also talks about the constituencies that are in the CCM. We have a research and academia, which met yesterday. We have other donors in there. We have the bilaterals and multilaterals. Okay, so we have the private sector. Private sector is it comes to the CCM under the umbrella of Zambia Federation of Employers. Then you are all here. You are all here in the CCM. You are 10 out of 17. So imagine if a vote were to be taken. The civil society is the majority of the CCM. So local NGO, I mean, their technical partners, the Americans helped us with these parts. We had what we called the review panel, which was back in the CCM. It came from USG agencies, you know, like PEPFAR, like USA, like CDC, PMI for malaria. They were coming from there to back the CCM. And of course, the Global Fund giving a lot of pressure in our country. And this here, I'm just telling you that the country dialogue objectives to identify needs of beneficiaries. Beneficiaries are the people that are receiving the commodities, the patients, or even those that are receiving the services. So not a particular organization, not a particular individual, but beneficiaries. Those that we need to positive impact. Also, we country dialogue ensures to diagnose and remove human rights barriers to accessing health services and to prioritize those interventions that will have the most impact. Impact is a catchword in global market or even in paper. Okay. By the way, as youths, you need to be connected to paper very strongly. Some people even forget that there's paper when they see global fund. Paper has more money than the global fund, even though again, America. Of course, building resource mobilization efforts, we had to work with the Ministry of Finance with that to make it a robust development funding. And evaluating the revised. Okay. Then we identify funding gaps. So all this happens in meetings. Every meeting, we sleep in dungeons from about January, about the 30th. That's when we were relieved a little bit, just a little bit, because in July the issue of screening started. Okay. Mr. Marambo here will bear witness with me. I even feel sick with that process. You know, I had a stiff neck. So, fortunately, I work with doctors, so they advise what to do. So also identifying gaps, the country, and ensuring that the CCM is functioning properly, because without the CCM, you can't even submit that funding request. There's no country in the world that is supported by the global fund that does not have a CCM. Even Congo DRC, as chaotic as they have a CCM. Okay. Of course, budget split being agreed on. Now there, I must say that you see the RSSH. Can someone tell me what was the latest stand? I think it's been talked about this morning. Anybody? Any hands? But you are young and your memory is sharp. No. Yes. You actually said it very well, but very low. Okay? So, resilient and sustainable systems for health. Building those systems. Okay? And of course, the implementation arrangements. So, the CCM had to put together a writing team and a review team. I think I mentioned that. But to do that, CCM Secretary, myself, and my colleagues, we had to draft terms of reference for these two teams. We had also to draft conflict of interest declaration policy. We had to draft the criteria of choosing these two teams. And these are the two teams that stage endorsed the process. Because we don't do it at the end. Every stage, you have to bring it to the CCM through the SPI committee. And of course, the CCM was also supported by the review team. Remember the US government agencies. Okay. Then we had another technical task team. There was a question about select PRs. So that technical task team under the oversight committee was put together a month later. This is an illustration of the funding request that we submitted. Those are the sections of the narrative. Okay, the country context there, the request itself, implementation, and sustainability. Implementation arrangements. So that's what I showed you earlier. Fail in there, risk analysis of the country, and the two PRs all in there. Opportunities for integration. You saw opportunities for integration in there, in the implementation arrangement, where MOH or CHARS is working with the different sectors of the country or of government. And of course, we had to talk about sustainability. This here, I'm demonstrating what we had to submit together with the funding. All this you can imagine. So without any one of these, they will throw it back at you. Say it's incomplete. What we need is a robust funding request. So we passed. Okay. And this fancy one is just telling you a process from the funding request development all the way to the board approving there. This is piece by piece demonstration of what we went through. And the last thing there is now going back to implementation. And these are the eligibility requirements that the CCM has to be assessed also to see if they are actually suitable to coordinate the process. So we had to submit also on our own to the global fund to demonstrate that we were actually suitable to coordinate the country. And so we needed to demonstrate the transparent and inclusive funding application development process and open and transparent principal recipient selection process. Then ER 3 to 6 was a continuous process that we do. In the dark circle, so the dark circle of implementation. This one I'm showing you TRP processes there. You can read on your own when you share. And this one I'm showing you the grant making process. Again, you can familiarize. And this one I'm showing you GAC and board approval processes. This is now really at the high up. So you when you're at the board level, then you know you've made it. Okay. And here I'm telling you that no one should ever tell you that someone else nominates PRs. It's only the CCM. If, for instance, government came, yeah, we want the Minister of Community Development and Social Services to be a PR. The CCM will not take that kindly, and then the global fund will not take that kindly, because there was no country dialogue around that. So PRs are nominated by the CCM and are accountable to the CCM. PRs manage grant implementation on behalf of the CCM. Okay, they sign grants with the global fund, and the CCM co-signs those grants. Okay, they take the financial and programmatic responsibilities of the grant. Supervisor. I think you remember the disease component has two PRs, one representing the public sector and another the non-state actors, which is the CHARS. Okay. And then the CCM countersigning on the grants. PRs select SRs. The CCM has nothing, totally nothing to do with the SRs. Eyes on the ball from them, PRs. Okay. The CCM for us just mentioned that the CCM has eyes on the ball, just the way Liverpool wants it. CCM is expected to oversee the grants. The agreement requires the PRR to share information with and report to the president. The PRR has an obligation to the CCM at the country level. This is a roadmap that we were following until COVID disturbed it. We were supposed to have submitted in June 20, sorry, May 25, we submitted June. So this one changed and the Iliabonga.
Thank you so much. Chris enjoys these presentations. He knows how to simplify them. The global fund language sometimes is complicated. It reminds me of that conversation I had yesterday at the Indala, where the young person was complaining about being technical. I think you can see here that if you don't grasp the technical stuff, we can't go anywhere. Because the language being used everywhere except for. So if you want to sit on this table, we need to learn this. Okay, if we're going to say no, we always have to simplify, it means we don't belong yet. We need to go to principle first, then later on in future, we may belong, but by then we might be 64. So this is the global fund, and this is the process of how the money ends up coming in the country. Are there any questions? If there are no questions, we're supposed to go back to the review of our minutes. Unfortunately, there's a bit of confusion on the minutes. You know, when you take a year, over a year, to have the next meeting, there's a possibility and there's a chance for confusion. So they may have been affected by COVID or something, but I think we'll be able to track them at some point. These minutes.
Or the docket.
Well, they don't get the minutes. These things have happened before. Okay, so if we are quick at stage, because I think we cannot be reviewing minutes of, we need to review minutes of the previous meeting, not any other. So if we don't have those, it means we'll skip that one for now. But I'm comforted, not too much, but to a certain extent that all the other constituencies that came before us skip that one. So it's it's comfort. We're the second last constituency. The last one is this afternoon. That's the TV constituency. That will be meeting in this very place at 2. So we definitely need to wind up. I think part of the updates from the constituency, from the youth constituency, part of it you've given. That's what we're talking about with Pitch, on how can we make information readily available for all. I know there are people that sometimes don't like the idea of linking the global fund, my presentation, to the news platform. I'll tell you that that provides a better chance for us to be more coordinated. Most of the movement in the country, we look at the women movement, they have NGOCC. They coordinate through that platform. They share information, they share knowledge, and they back each other up. The people living with HIV, NZP. But then for the youth constituency, there was that gap. Even when I came in, I think it's always been difficult to actually communicate fully because there's no proper platform for us to communicate. We are not saying that ZWP owns the entire process. We don't own it. We are a facilitating platform. We want to facilitate the flow of information. So we do not want to, it's not our intention to say we want to dominate, no. Our intention is to coordinate the voices. So regardless of where we're speaking from, we can speak as one voice and move away really from the putting down syndrome. I think we'll be able to achieve much more as young people. Yes, I know sometimes we compete rigorously for resources, but the competition is not amongst ourselves. The provider is independent of our processes. So it's us reaching out. But when you're together, we can even attract even more resources and build our systems better. So Zero IP platform is just there to facilitate this free flow and easy access to information. You can provide that feedback to us, and we can also reach out to you to provide you with information. We have access to any office in this country and probably beyond. We can access anyone. And that's the reason why we say, for us, even our kind of advocacy as a network, it's not the one where we go and make noise in the paper, do this. We conduct community-led monitoring as a platform, working with different organizations. We're implementing in the local. We're implementing through member organizations that are youth organizations. They're collecting data and the like. But when you find the Ministry of Health, with anyone who is implementing, we don't go to the papers because we know we have access to the permanent secretary, we have access to the minister, and we always say, if we need to go up to State House, we'll go there. And if His Excellency doesn't listen to us, we'll probably engage the Pope when we intervene. There are always ways and means of getting talking, right? And we can dialogue with people. So for us to strengthen that coordination, it's key for all of us. So I'm hoping that we can put together, make use of that resource that will be available. So starting with the calls right now for proposals, we'll make sure they are made available also on the platform so you can access them there. If you have any other questions, read the call, that's important. Ask your question by the 22nd of December. That's a deadline for all questions to be submitted. Then Chance is going to respond to you. Beyond that, yeah, and the actual proposal the submission is 4th January. But for the questions, if you have questions after the 22nd of December, you submit all your questions via email. They'll provide an email address there. They will provide responses afterwards. So beyond the 22nd, they're not going to be talking to you because then you are in the field. You are competing for those resources. So they're not going to favor anyone by talking to you. And not even me, I have easy access to Charles or any PR in this country. But I can't call Charles to talk about this particular call because I know that I'm conflicted. Okay? So I can only use that platform. Let's send emails and ask questions, clarify. And also, what we could also potentially do is we can send those questions to us if you want. You can send them to me. We'll compile all the questions and submit as a constituency, and we push for answers. When the answers come, if they're not clear, we can follow up because we have access to them and they'll be able to respond. When they post the answers, let's use those responses to perfect our proposals. But we need to start working on them now. Submission deadline is 4th January by 14 hours, Zambia time. The court.
Mine is sorry, my name is once again Afan Churu, come from Northwestern. Mine is a comment for contribution and it goes directly to the chair as well as Mr. Chris for a very good presentation and having on the meeting. Sir, I commend you and thank you very much for making this easy for most of us.
So the chair missed.
I also I just congratulate you.
Yes. Thank you, but you can repeat.
Thank you, Bwana Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chris, for making this very educative and eye-opening for those of us who thought were undertold with the current.
Thank you very much. You know, there are very important people here. So first of all, you are a key population.
Under the global fund, under the global fund and the NASI.
But this man, like he said, he is capable of opening certain doors. And your security actually, I may use, you are actually sitting very high. This man has connections and can speak for you. not just with the Global Fund and with PEPFAR also, but also with the GIZ and other donors. And donors have little weakness for youth. And your coordinator knows that weakness and can utilize it to the maximum. But that gentleman there, those two gentlemen, the one straight there, that one is sitting on the NAC Council. Did you know that? Sitting on the NAC Council. It's part of the council.
National AIDS Council.
National AIDS Council. And he holds one vote, the same vote that the PS who sits on the NAC Council votes. If they vote for a certain motion, proposal, PS one vote, that man one vote. Sitting on the CCM, PS Dr. Malama, one vote, PS Mkuba Chukuri, Finance, one vote, Sibu Malamo, one vote. So I'm just trying to emphasize that you are very important people and you are sitting on two boards that are very important to the disease control of HIV and TB.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for highlighting that. So we have the power. We have the power, and because it's through this coordination structure that when they were put together the board, they reached out to ZYP to identify young people and send their CVs. And also, again, you need to be credible. You not just go, okay? So we send CVs and they selected the CVs that were recommended as a platform. And Mr. Andrew Smata, who is also a board member for ZYP, is actually our Treasurer General. So he's my boss, actually, who was successful in that role. So even PEPFAR can add also. PEPFAR is one of the other platforms where we hold a lot of power. The PEPFAR Civil Society Advisory Group, we are chairing that process. So we have a lot of power. So if we can put together our needs, identify what we want, and how we want to do it, we can achieve quite a lot. That's it. All right, so with that said, the question, or those want to congratulate me. Let's encourage more congratulations.
Sorry, I'm standing most of the time speaking. It's all because I've been so much interested. I think for more than 10 years in trying to understand the operations of CCM and also trying to link my colleagues to understand the CCM. So to start with, I'd like to thank Sivu and also Mr. Chris for undertaking such an important meeting. I would like to encourage my fellow young people who are here that as resilient youth for change, we haven't sat to wait for such a meeting in order for us to understand the operations of CCM. But we've engaged the CCM through CIVO to be part of the meetings that we have, such that they explain to our beneficiaries what the system is all about, what the global fund is all about. Every time we talk about the girls and young women, they put into the global fund, but they don't understand who is in the forefront looking for that money and who's supporting us in the CCM. So I think from here, it's always important that we report back to our constituencies, our organizations, on what we've learned and what opportunities we found in this gathering. So once more, I wish to thank you, sir, and request that your collaborate to have a conversation with Civil and your office so that we try to bring you some of the findings that we've so far gotten since we had that meeting in July when we invited you, and also we've been out in the rural areas trying to also talk about the CCM, its operations. So there's a lot of information that we got, which we need to formally communicate to your office. Thank you.
Okay. can almost say that must be a fund. Chair would be happy with me.
Thank you so much, Philemon. And indeed, Philemon has been very, very proactive. He has provided a platform himself where people connected us there. And he's always reaching out to see how we can collaborate even at the highest level. How can we present his findings to the CCM? And I think we've been available to provide that guidance on how we move the next steps. So in terms of that conversation of sharing the findings and the like, I think it's exactly what I said before, that what we need to do, for instance, through a meeting like this, we could have communicated yeah, you share with the constituency, they actually see, they validate. So the other route is dependent on the content. We can then decide which committee of the CCM, is it my committee or is it the oversight committee that's supposed to hear you? Then we can set up that arrangement where you present through a committee. Then through that committee, your findings can be presented to the full CCM. And you can be invited as an observer within the CCM, where oversight, if it's only oversight you present, there are any questions there you come into to clarify on anything that's only gray area, right? If it's SPI committee, I will present or make a presentation to the full CCM, because the CCM only receives this content through its structures. And there's little or nothing that goes directly to the CCM. So we see through the committees. So that would be the advice, but we can look at together, we look at the content and decide which route we take. Since this constituency meeting has been missed opportunity, if it's not tight deadlines, there are other constituency meetings. I feel there's a lot of value in starting at this level, because then your findings are validated by the constituency. There will be members here from other provinces that will tell you, so, okay, so yeah, this speaks to our situation for real, even where you come from and the like. So you carry more weight. Then from the constituency, we take it through the committee and it goes to the CCM. You will get more feedback that way. That's the thing. Thank you. And just to state also that we continue to remain available.
Thank you. So I am grateful to have been part of this meeting today, although I got a very late invitation.
Did you really have to say that?
As a reminder. But it is nice to have been a part of this, and I'd like to say that, as AAA said, we strive towards the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, sensitizing the youth and adolescents and young women about these issues. And one of our bigger goals is achieving SDG number 3, good health and well-being. So as part of the co-chair, the co-chairs for the Provincial Development Coordinating Committee, which dives into the National Development Coordinating Committee, I hope that we can collaborate more on these issues, because universal health is part of national development. And I would like to see how we can work more together.
Good afternoon once again. Thank you. We are Phenomenal Association. My name is Abraham. Then once again, we'd like to say thank you so much for Mr. Suma for giving us this opportunity. It's really a great privilege to be on such a meeting with you. At least we are able to learn how things are done. Like you said yesterday when you attended it now, you mentioned you said you need to learn how things are done. So for us as Phenomenal Association, we see it as a humble privilege to be part and parcel of the meetings, and also to take how CCM is doing things and how things are run, to ensure that we have access to achieve all our technical goals that we have as Women in Association, helping adolescents, young people in society. So for me and the organization, we say thank you so much for being part and parcel of this.
Accept all the congratulatory messages. Once, thank you so much in anticipation, and thank you to all of you for accepting the invitation. I know to most of you it was very short notice. I was a bit disorganized this time around. There was another colleague who was helping me organize most of these things. His name is Nathan, because I've been very busy myself. With the Dow took up most of my time. But I'm glad that you still made it. I was worried. I thought we have 5 people in here this morning, but Nathan assured me that he had done part of his homework and it will be okay. For young people that continue to be relevant, for me especially, I'm really linked to young people. If I meet you, I can tell you a lot about how you relate, what you intend to do, how relevant you are. And once you know you're relevant, to continue to engage you. But for me, I think it's the second engagement, right? The first time we met in Brigava, I heard of them from, firstly from DG, Director General National Youth Council. She mentioned them in passing. Then I heard them again from Dr. Barihuta, UNAID's country director, who mentioned them. So I figured there was something they had to offer. That's the reason why we brought them to Brigava to come and share what they are doing. And they're doing amazing work. Those of you that were there, I think you can also attest to that. So for young people, as long as you continue to be relevant in your communities, and we know what you're doing, you're sharing what you're doing, you're sharing experiences, I think the platforms will remain open. And there's so many of them. Very soon we'll get to the process of the COP. By January, we'll get to the process of the COP, the country operation plan for the US government under PEPFAR. So that process again, we play a huge role in that process. So we engage as many young people as possible to contribute to where the response should be going and how it should be going. So at this point, I'll ask Mr. Shikadra to just say a few remarks before we finally close the meeting.
Thank you, colleagues. For me, just to thank you to come. You know, we have been trying to meet. We are supported by the Global Fund for one meeting, and then the other meeting normally is PEPFAR that supports us. But we could only do this one. We are supported by the Global Fund. After the processes of the funding because were completed. And the reason is that, again, there are these restrictions, but you may understand that Global Fund actually supports based on performance. So they just said, you concentrate on the funding because otherwise there will be no money in the next 3 years. That's why we had to squeeze in just before Christmas. We need to bring our people together. So you can imagine that me and my team, we've been working back to back from Monday, one meeting in the morning, another meeting in the afternoon. And this, what you're saying as meeting here, that's the lunch. There's no lunch. This is the lunch. So we're going to another meeting at 14 hours. So back to back up to today, we have TB last this afternoon. So we needed to pack it like that so that at least we can update you on the funding request and the grants. Now, we had started mobilizing the money from PEPFAR back in July, August. But you know, COVID had already hit. And you know, American policy. We have this budget like this one. They said, we can't. We are not going to point fingers at us that we are the one who spiked the disease because of our meetings. We don't want to be legally liable. So you can imagine, they told us, we're going to go virtual. Now, you know, negotiating with the US government, very tough, right? See what will tell you. So now we started, okay, we have to go virtual, we have to change the concept note, we have to change the budget, and the budget goes to and from, to and from, to and from. By the time we were actually agreeing, we had moved out of COP19 to COP20. So then they told us, okay, we'll look at this, you can implement it in COP20. So we are earmarking that for Q1. But colleagues, it will be virtual. I'm just preparing you mentally. It will be virtual. We will meet here. And there is no logistics like what Mwaka is doing there. Even us as CCM Secretariat, they cut out. We said, no, it's a snack, child, a snack. They cut it out. No, you'll be sitting in your office. Okay, how do you know my wife has packed something for you? Anyways, but so they only accepted logistics to help with the connectivity, to help with our participants with the connectivity and things like that. So we are earmarking that for Q1, and we are hoping that that will create an opportunity where you can actually interact and consider and endorse your minutes online. So, Chair, if you haven't sent the November minutes, maybe you can send them again so that you come for the one, everyone is aware of those minutes and they can read them. So thank you very much for coming. It's been difficult. This year, I can't wait for this year to end. It's been a very tough year for all of us. Forget the funding request, but the COVID. Last time, I attended a meeting in Nairobi, was in February or something like that. Then we all got locked down. All the meetings around the funding request that we could have shared with our own people in Africa, East and Central Africa, they all went there. So it was not very helpful, but we had to accept the situation. And so by saying this, I'm just preparing you that support from paper will be a virtual meeting. So I think as Mwaka is sitting there, I think, have you sent back now the file? Yeah. So Mwaka, as late as when? Yesterday? Yes, we had to send now the final budget yesterday. So that they upload it in their system so that we can hold that virtual meeting in Q1. So thank you very much again for coming to this meeting, Chair.
Thank you so much. This meeting, I will upset. Okay, so being on the Chris also, let's just appreciate the CCM Secretary for the hard work they do on our behalf. It's not an easy task to put all that together, the back and forth that he's talking about. I can attest to that. I don't envy him, although of course I've got my own hurdles. Sure. So thank you so much finally to everyone. Thank you so much for coming, and let's keep interacting. My lines are open. So my number is 0977 8819. What's good as 4? Yeah. So 881941. Huh? So yesterday I was challenging the young people at the Indaba that are looking for innovations. So if you have an innovative idea that you think responds to any of the challenges facing young people, say health-related challenges, send it to me. It's a good one, we'll polish it together. I always say getting money is the easiest thing you can do. The easiest thing to do is getting the money. But having an idea and putting it together is the most difficult thing. So if you have an idea, you have achieved one each step. Then you can leave the small parts to me. Together we can find the money. So thank you so much. I now declare the meeting closed.